Chapter 1894. After obtaining Alchemist Zicheng's guarantee, Ling Han naturally felt much more assured. Otherwise, after he and the Empress reached the peak stage of the fourth severance, they would have to suppress their cultivation, unable to advance even an inch. It had only been a year, and he wanted to succeed in spirit refinement and reach the peak stage of the fourth severance. This was a little difficult. However, only with difficulty would it be challenging, and only then would it be interesting. Ling Han was filled with ambition, and he asked Alchemist Zicheng for guidance on the details of spirit refinement. For immortals, rest was almost unnecessary. Thus, the master and disciple, one taught seriously, while the other studied attentively. They completely forgot about the time. Thankfully, they were in the pill concocting chamber, which allowed time to accelerate. Half a year later, by the time Ling Han had mastered the art of spirit enhancement, only 2 days had passed in the outside world. Master leads the way, but cultivation depends on oneself. If there's anything you don't understand, you can come and ask Master. However, if you want to surpass Master, then it's best that you develop the ability to think independently now. If you can solve your own problems, then solve them yourself. This was Grandmaster Zicheng's experience. His first disciple was also a prodigy of alchemy, and he viewed him as a precious treasure. If there was anything he didn't understand, he would immediately teach him and dispel his doubts. However, in the end, this disciple had reached the lowest heights. When he was teaching the last 2 disciples, Grandmaster Zicheng changed slightly. He guided them to solve problems independently, but he still interfered too much. Although these 2 disciples had surpassed his eldest disciple, they were still unable to surpass his limits. Therefore, Ling Han had to start from the beginning and train him to use his own brain to think, instead of looking for him whenever he encountered a problem. Ling Han bade farewell to Alchemist Zicheng, left the manor, and returned to the 4th level. Outsiders were not allowed to stay on the 5th level. That was the rule. Unless Ling Han decided not to be an apprentice, and instead became an alchemy apprentice, he would be allowed to stay on the mountain. It was unknown who had set this rule. In any case, this rule had existed for innumerable years, and even Alchemist Zicheng had to abide by it. Ling Han did not take it to heart. In any case, in the 4th floor of the Alchemist Hall, the Alchemy Room's Alchemy Room also had a 100x acceleration effect, so it would not affect his alchemy. Moreover, he usually spent most of his time comprehending under the reincarnation tree, so he was even less affected. He walked to the door and opened it with a creak. Alchemy apprentice Mo was currently standing guard at the entrance. Without Alchemist Zicheng's permission, he didn't dare to enter. Therefore, outsiders thought that alchemy apprentice Mo was very impressive, but in reality he was from the same sect. It was just that there were no outsiders here, so no one could see alchemy apprentice Mo's appearance. Otherwise, they would definitely not be so afraid of him. Alchemy apprentice Mo stared at Ling Han as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. What happened? How did Ling Han walk out of there unscathed? This brat had been summoned twice by Grandmaster Zicheng. The first time he had directly left, and though he had gone the second time, he had also made Grandmaster Zicheng wait for a very long time. In his mind, Ling Han had definitely been dismembered, and his bones ground into dust. But am I hallucinating now? I must be hallucinating. Ling Han smiled and waved his hand in front of him. Hey, this is not an illusion. Impossible. Alchemy apprentice Mo jumped 10 meters into the air, as if someone had stepped on his tail. His face was filled with terror as he pointed at Ling Han and said, "No, no, no, this must be my inner demon. You can't be a living person." But Ling Han slapped him across the face and calmly said, "Will my inner demon slap you?" "No, this is a test of my inner demon." Alchemy apprentice Mo's eyes were resolute, yet his expression was dazed. "Papa." Ling Han slapped him a few times in succession, yet alchemy apprentice Mo remained unperturbed. His determination was truly admirable. He had been scared out of his wits. Ling Han stroked his chin. Forget it, he couldn't be bothered to deal with a minor character like this. He swaggered off, and alchemy apprentice Mo wore a dazed expression as he repeatedly said, "This is my inner demon, This is my inner demon. Ling Han returned to the 4th level, and once again went to the alchemist pavilion. He stayed there calmly and inconspicuously. However, in the outside world, this caused a huge uproar. He had slapped alchemy apprentice Mo and met with alchemist Zicheng, yet he had actually returned as if nothing had happened. This was far too inconceivable. There were many intelligent people, and they immediately came to a conclusion. Alchemist Zicheng greatly admired Ling Han, and that was why he had spared his disrespectful actions. Since that was the case, why didn't everyone hurry up and make a move? The various great clans all sent out important lobbyists, wanting to recruit Ling Han. This was a rising star of alchemy, and his future prospects were indescribably bright. If they could tie him to their side, they would definitely be glorious for countless generations. Unfortunately, they couldn't see Ling Han at all. Ling Han had already started cultivating in seclusion. Meanwhile, Lu Xianming, Qin Guyu, and the others all wore gloomy expressions. Ling Han's performance was far too freakish. Not only was he exceptional in both alchemy and martial arts, but he had also reached the pinnacle in both aspects. This caused them to be incredibly wary of him. As Ling Han's martial art level rose, would they still be able to kill him in the future? Thus, they had to make their move as soon as possible. However, Ling Han was in the alchemist pavilion. If he could still be assassinated, what was the point of the alchemist pavilion? Thus, they could only wait silently. They still didn't know that Ling Han had already been taken as a disciple by alchemist Zicheng. Otherwise, they would either completely lose their fighting spirit, or take the risk and stake everything on a single throw. Under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han was currently digesting the spirit refinement technique that alchemist Zicheng had taught him. Every branch of alchemists had their own unique spirit refinement technique. The wisdom of the founding ancestors was truly admirable. With their own understanding of celestial medicines and great Tao, they had forcibly improved the quality of celestial pills. It was said that through a few spirit refinements, one could even refine a defective pill into a genuine pill. Ling Han didn't have any foundation now, so he could only study. However, if he only studied, he couldn't possibly surpass the peak of alchemist Zicheng's achievements. At most, he could only reach the same level. Back then, alchemist Zicheng had surpassed his master's limit. Though he was still a 4-star alchemist, he had advanced from the 6th refinement to the 7th refinement. It was also said that only by reaching the 9th refinement could one push open the door to becoming a 5-star alchemist. Conversely, spirit refinement was incredibly important. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to begin. Instead, he painstakingly meditated for a whole 10,000 years before finally stopping. 10,000 years under the reincarnation tree was equivalent to 100 days in the outside world. This was a little long. The Empress was also cultivating. She was filled with confidence in Ling Han, and was certain that he would definitely obtain the natural peach seal. Thus, her mission was to reach the peak stage of the 4th severance as soon as possible, and then refine the heavenly Tao Jade to open up her path to the Emperor tier. Meanwhile, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden could only wait for an opportunity to break through to the severing mundane tier. However, there were 2 infants in the Black Tower, which gave her considerable comfort, and she wouldn't feel bored. These were spiritual infants born from the source power of heaven and earth. They were innately close to Tao, and when they grew up, they would definitely become kings among kings. Thus, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was in high spirits. She herself couldn't possibly achieve great accomplishments, but nurturing 2 outstanding individuals still gave her a great sense of accomplishment. Ling Han also let her be. He planned to take these 2 children as disciples when they were a little older. Though this master of his was often a hands-off shopkeeper, taking disciples was a very fun thing. The Empress continued to cultivate in seclusion, while the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden brought the 2 children out for a breather. Ling Han immersed himself in the alchemy chamber, and began his difficult path of breaking through to the 1st refinement. Chapter 1896. As long as they ruthlessly humiliated Ling Han in public, making him unable to back down, would alchemist Zicheng still have the face to push Ling Han to the position of Holy Son? Wasn't he afraid of the repercussions? Though this would also displease alchemist Zicheng and the others, if they allowed Ling Han to become the Holy Sun, they could only watch as Ling Han ascended to the position of chairperson. Thus, they had to take a gamble. In the alchemy chamber, Ling Han was completely focused. Very quickly, another half a year had passed. He looked nervous and pulled an alchemical pill towards him. 9 heavens flames spewed out, and boom, it wrapped around the alchemical pill. He had always failed at this step. The 9 heavens flame that he spat out was too excessive, directly burning the celestial pill to ashes. After many failures, and added with innumerable deductions, this time he was sure that he would definitely succeed. Boom, the 9 heavens flame blazed, and the celestial pill shone brightly. It was as if the essence within had been drawn out, and it intertwined with the Tao of heaven and earth, forming some kind of indescribable change. Success! Ling Han suddenly laughed loudly. It really hadn't been easy, but he had finally succeeded. Comprehending under the reincarnation tree, even if he had comprehended for 10,000 years, that was only in his mental state. In reality, the flow of time for his physical body was still the same as in reality. But in the time cultivation chamber, it was different. His divine sense and physical body had both passed the same amount of time. He had used 1.5 years in reality to reach the first refinement, but in reality, his body had truly passed 150 years. This was really, really long. Thankfully, he had finally succeeded. Ling Han looked at the celestial pill in his hand. There was a faint golden line on its surface. Even if it was the same first refinement, there was a difference. The golden line on his was slightly lighter, and was far from comparable to Grandmaster Zicheng's. He couldn't help but sigh. Old Ginger was spicier. He couldn't compare, really couldn't compare. If Grandmaster Zicheng heard his complaints, he would definitely be so angry that his beard would twitch. He had immersed himself in alchemy for how many years? If Ling Han caught up to him in a short period of time, then what the hell was he going to do? On the other hand, Ling Han had already reached this level on his first successful spirit refinement. This was too astonishing. Even Grandmaster Zicheng couldn't compare in the past. What else do you want? Ling Han pushed open the door and came to his own residence. He saw that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was currently in the courtyard with 2 naked children. This was a pair of extremely mischievous troublemakers, and they just so happened to be a man and a woman. They were both wearing red undergarments, and they were playing around the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. When they discovered that Ling Han had pushed open the door and entered, they immediately shrunk behind the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Then they poked their heads out and looked around. They were the last 2 people of the Garuru tribe. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. What, you don't recognize me? Although these 2 children were still infants at that time, their talent was too extraordinary. As long as they glanced at Ling Han, he would definitely remember them. Sure enough, after a while, the 2 children immediately flew out and hugged one of Ling Han's legs, calling out, "Godfather! When did I become your godfather?" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but smile, and said, "You, miss you every day." This boy was called Shirlei, and the girl was called Shiryu, because they had both jumped out from rocks. Ling Han shook his legs, but the 2 children stuck to him like sticky candy. No matter how he shook, he couldn't loosen them. He could only say, "Let go first." The 2 kids hugged each other tightly. In the end, it was the heavenly phoenix divine maiden who spoke, and carried the 2 children over. Ling Han and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden talked for a while. With the 2 children present, they couldn't be too intimate, which made the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes sad. Ling Han's heart swayed and he moved closer and said, "I'll come find you at night." "Godmother, why would Godfather come find you at night?" Shirlei was a little mischievous. "You're so stupid. Godfather obviously has to play kissing with Godmother," Shiryu said in an old-fashioned manner. "Oh." Shirlei nodded and then looked confused. "What's kissing? You don't even know kissing, stupid." Shiryu's expression was full of disdain. Children nowadays, Ling Han sighed, and kissed the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's red lips lightly, and then left. He came to the 5th level, and reported the good news to alchemist Zicheng. Alchemist Zicheng was moved and said, "Success." Although Ling Han was half a year late, this was still an astonishing achievement. At least, it was better than what he had done in the past. Ling Han nodded and handed over the alchemical pill with a successful spirit refinement. "Please have a look, Master." Alchemist Zicheng received it, and he only glanced at it, and his face instantly shuddered. "This is the alchemical pill from your first successful spirit refinement?" he asked. Ling Han nodded and said, "It can't compare to what Master has refined. I've let down Master's love." He was slightly embarrassed and really ashamed. Alchemist Zicheng's expression was strange. He endured for a long time, and then said, "It's good that you know your shortcomings. Although your talent is not low, you must not be arrogant. Only then will you have a chance to reach the peak of alchemy." Ling Han nodded and accepted this humbly. Seeing Ling Han's slightly disappointed expression, Alchemist Zicheng almost blurted out, "You're a fucking super prodigy." Although Ling Han's current performance was indeed inferior to his, who was he? He was a 4-star alchemist, and a 7th refinement at that? If he could reach my level now, would there still be any justice in this world? Alchemist Zicheng was afraid that Ling Han would be too proud if he told the truth. Since Ling Han thought that his own level was not very high, he would just go along with his words. However, seeing Ling Han's disappointed expression, he couldn't bear to see him like this. He was conflicted, too fucking conflicted. As it turned out, taking a super prodigy as a disciple also had all kinds of troubles. Of course, this kind of trouble was blissful to Alchemist Zicheng. He wished that Ling Han could be a little more talented so that he could be a little more troubled. 10 days from now, it will be the day you are officially crowned as a holy son. However, this is also a test. At that time, anyone can question your alchemy level, and you will inevitably have to refine pills. You should rest well in these few days and recover to your peak condition, Alchemist Zicheng said. Ling Han nodded and said, "I understand." It just so happened that he had been separated from his wife for so long, so it was time for him to do his best. Alchemist Zicheng waved his hand and said, "Go." Ling Han retreated from the manor, and a smile instantly appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face. Then, the smile on his face became wider and wider, and he couldn't help but laugh heartily, startling countless birds in the mountains. Awesome, too awesome. It's even more awesome than earning 100 billion star stones. He was truly extremely satisfied with this disciple of his. Unfortunately, for the sake of Ling Han's future, he had to endure it. He couldn't praise Ling Han, and this made him feel slightly regretful. However, when Ling Han ascended to the position of a holy son, his outstanding talent would be the focus of everyone's attention, and he would become the most dazzling star. With such an excellent disciple, what more could I ask for? He sighed ruefully, his heart filled with joy. Reading on a mobile phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 1897. It was only 10 days, so naturally, it passed in a flash. Ling Han had been keeping a low profile for the past few days because he had been perfecting his spirit cultivation technique. He had only succeeded in the first refinement, but he was still far from perfection. A medicinal pill could only perform a 9-fold spirit enhancement. Generally speaking, a 3-fold or 4-fold spirit enhancement was already very, very impressive. Therefore, the quality of each spirit enhancement was very important. 2 pill refiners of different standards performed spirit refinement on the same immortal pill at the same time. Both of them performed the 3rd refinement, but the final results could be as different as heaven and earth. Ling Han had to work hard to reach the highest level of the 1st refinement. Although Alchemist Zicheng had said that the increase in the level of an alchemist would also affect the level of spirit refinement, since it was temporarily impossible for him to become a 2-star alchemist, there was no harm in spending some effort on spirit refinement. From 1-star to 2-star, the complexity of alchemy was at least 100 times higher. One was for severing mundane tier, and the other was for dividing soul tier. So could they be of the same level? Alchemist Zicheng was already very optimistic in his estimation. No matter what, Ling Han would have to wait another 1 million or so years before he could become a 2-star alchemist. Moreover, This was after considering the fact that he had entered the time cultivation room. However, alchemist Zicheng didn't know that Ling Han also had a reincarnation tree. The effects of a reincarnation tree on comprehending Tao were truly astonishing. But even so, it would still take several thousand years for Ling Han to become a 2-star alchemist. Ling Han had previously derived the concoction process of a 2-star alchemist, but he was forced to stop after operating it for less than 1/10,000th of the process. The regulations of heaven and earth involved in this were too complicated. Though severing mundane tears could refine it, they would need to spend an endless amount of time. Moreover, even after spending so much time, he could only refine a 2-star pill. Fortunately, one's lifespan was unlimited after advancing into the severing mundane tier. Otherwise, it was possible that a 2-star alchemist would only be able to refine a pitifully few types of alchemical pills even at death's door. Ling Han was not greedy, and did not try to increase the number of 1-star immortal pills he could concoct. Instead, he focused his attention on spirit enhancement. Spirit refinement was about better understanding the composition of immortal medicines and pills, as well as the workings of the great Tao of heaven and earth. In reality, everything could be achieved. In the ancient realm, there were people who had reached the Tao through alchemy, so it was naturally possible in the celestial realm as well. For example, Grandmaster Zicheng. When he had become a 1-star alchemist, he had only been in the severing mundane tier. After that, he had no time to bother with cultivation, and had instead been continuously refining alchemical pills. However, as he continued to cultivate, he naturally reached the peak stage of the 4th severance. Then he successfully divided his soul, established an immortal palace, and advanced to the ascending origin tier. All paths lead to the same destination. Therefore, Ling Han was very calm. Alchemy was also a part of cultivation. 10 days later, the Empress came out of seclusion. It was not because she had reached the peak stage of the 4th severance, but rather because today was Ling Han's big day, so she naturally had to cheer for her beloved husband. Early in the morning, Ling Han brought the 2 women with him and set off. Bewitching Maiden Ro also came uninvited, and shamelessly pretended to be Ling Han's friend. This Ling Han was going to become the holy son of Alchemy City, so wouldn't he be able to give away celestial pills as he pleased in the future? For a shrewd, bewitching maiden like her, she naturally knew that she had to form a good relationship with Ling Han now. In truth, Ling Han really did not want to get too close to her. Firstly, this bewitching maiden was indeed very charming, and secondly, the Empress was constantly hinting to him to accept this 9 revolutions charm physique, which caused him to resist from the bottom of his heart. But the great bewitching maiden was all smiles. As the saying went, it was hard to hit a smiling face, so it was difficult to chase her away. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was carrying Shirlei and Shiryu. These 2 naughty children were practically brats, and incredibly mischievous. They sized up bewitching Maiden Ro, and made all kinds of experienced comments, causing Ling Han to be very speechless. Where had these 2 brats learned all this? These 2 brats were not afraid of heaven or earth, and the only thing they were afraid of was the Empress. It was as if the Empress' exquisite beauty and honor would even affect them. The coronation ceremony was held on the 4th level, so those that could come here all had powerful backgrounds. No matter what, they had to have the background of a 3-star force. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and he saw a few familiar faces, like Fu Gaoyun, Fu Tonghai, Sidtang, and Xiang Yan. It should be known that the Fu clan was really far away from this place. Even if they used a warship to travel, they definitely could not reach this place without at least half a year's time. But now that they had come, it could be seen just how great the prestige of Alchemy City was. Coming here might not necessarily make Alchemy City feel indebted, but if they did not come, what if someone bore a grudge against them? The alchemists of the world, or at least the alchemists of the Eastern Celestial Realm, all viewed Alchemy City as their holy land, their totem. As long as Alchemy City called upon them, the alchemists of the world would definitely listen and obey. Thus, this 4-star force could just barely rival 5-star forces. However, when Fu Gaoyun and the others arrived at Ling Han, their mouths were all wide open. This was especially so for Fu Xiaoyun, whose beautiful eyes were almost round. Situ Xiaozhen, however, did not show any surprise. She only muttered, "If this guy's ass hadn't been raped, how could he have climbed to this position?" Although they had heard that the new holy son of Alchemy City was called Ling Han, they definitely could not connect the two Ling Hans to each other. A person who had been hunted had suddenly become the holy son of an alchemy holy land? Who could believe this? When they saw Ling Han's familiar face, they instantly felt as if they were in a dream. They felt that this was far too surreal, far too illusory. Not only was the Fu clan stunned, but there was also the Lunar Sect, the Han clan, the Qianzhao clan, and the others. They were all staring at Ling Han with wide eyes and slack jaws. However, in the past, a commander of the Rock Palace had appeared, and he had already beaten them to the point where they could not even muster the slightest bit of anger. Now that Ling Han had become the holy son of a 4-star force, they even more so did not dare to mention the matter of revenge. However, there was a single thought in their minds, and that was Ling Han was far too capable of causing trouble. Previously, his talent in martial art was nature-defying, and he had actually been able to kill the successors of 2 celestial king-tier sects, and now he was actually doing so well in an alchemy holy land. How could there possibly be such a freakish freak in this world? Ling Han only smiled at Fu Gaoyun, and then strode over to the center of the plaza. The Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden naturally followed closely behind him, and Bewitching Maiden Ro also shamelessly followed along. Being able to make a name for herself in this kind of situation was extremely beneficial to her. In future, if anyone wanted to make a move against her or the Purity Sect, they would have to consider the reaction of Alchemy City, and whether they could afford to provoke this colossus. Alchemy City was already the strongest force below Celestial King Tier, so as long as Celestial King Tier forces did not make a move, the Purity Sect would be as stable as a mountain. Bewitching Maiden Ro was not only good at seducing others. Being able to be chosen as the Holy Daughter, she was naturally skilled in dealing with people. The Empress saw this, and a faint smile curled up the corners of her lips. This little bewitching maiden would become her husband's woman sooner or later, and it was impossible that the fertile water would flow into the fields of an outsider. Now let her show off. In Alchemy City, it was a rare occasion that 3 4-star alchemists had appeared at the same time. They were all seated on a high platform. They were all ascending origin elites, and all of them were exuding an astonishing aura. They could not be underestimated just because they were alchemists. It's about time we can begin the ceremony. Alchemist Zicheng stood up and presided over the ceremony. Firstly, he was the chairperson of Alchemy City, and secondly, Ling Han was more so his disciple. If he did not support him, who would? Wait! Right at this moment, a shout rang out, and a young man flew over, his expression filled with fighting spirit. "I want to battle him again." He pointed at Ling Han. It was none other than Zhao Qingfeng. Chapter 1898. How could a troublemaker appear on such a solemn occasion? Grandmaster Zicheng's expression immediately darkened. Zhao Qingfeng jumping out to ruin the atmosphere was not the main point, but rather the meaning behind this. For today, he had made a lot of arrangements. Safety was of course the most important. It could be said that there shouldn't be any troublemakers. For example, Zhao Qingfeng had been recuperating for a long time. Although he had recovered a few months ago and hadn't left, he had also anticipated that he might cause trouble today. There were experts keeping watch and wouldn't let him out. However, Zhao Qingfeng had appeared. Who did? It should be known that Grandmaster Zicheng was the chairperson of Alchemy City, and the other 2 4-star alchemists did not even manage the affairs of Alchemy City. His authority could be said to be unrivaled, and only something as important as appointing a new holy son would require the agreement of the 2 4-star alchemists. Well, he'd like to know who it is. How dare you? A new holy son is about to be crowned. How dare you cause trouble here? Hurry up and scram. A dividing soul realm expert berated. Though Zhao Qingfeng's talent was heaven-defying, he was currently only at the peak stage of the 4th severance, so he did not need to take him seriously at all. Zhao Qingfeng didn't even glance at this expert. He just stared at Ling Han, his battle intent almost tangible. "Ling Han, do you dare to fight?" Judging from the battle intent he emitted, his strength had increased by a large margin compared to before he was injured. As expected of a heaven-defying genius. That defeat not only didn't affect his martial art heart, but it also helped him improve. I really can't imagine it. He's clearly already at the peak stage of the fourth severance, yet his strength can actually still increase. This must be a genius. This is going to be interesting. Back then, Ling Han had only barely managed to win against Zhao Qingfeng. Now, however, Zhao Qingfeng's strength has skyrocketed. It's hard to say who will win this battle. Although they are competing in martial art and not alchemy, it will still be a huge stain on the new saint's record if he suffers a crushing defeat on the first day. What I'm curious about is how Zhao Qingfeng got here. I don't believe he could get here so easily. You're saying that someone in the city is helping Zhao Qingfeng? Everyone discussed, and after thinking about it carefully, everyone revealed a solemn expression. What did these signs signify? Ling Han looked at Zhao Qingfeng and said indifferently, "You're just a defeated opponent. How can you speak of bravery?" That was the last time, but it's different this time. Zhao Qingfeng's gaze was cold, and his killing intent materialized. His grasp of the massacre law had improved. This was not strange. In such an intense and sublime battle, Ling Han had directly obtained the opportunity to break through to the fourth severance. Though Zhao Qingfeng had been defeated and had not been able to grasp the comprehension of the fifth severance, his boiling killing intent had still pushed the regulations of slaughter to a higher level. He was extremely confident that even Ling Han's terrifying physique would be able to easily break through such a law-sharpening edge. The Empress took a step forward and walked out. She looked at Zhao Qingfeng coldly, and a light breeze ruffled the hem of her dress, revealing her perfect curves. She was indescribably moving. Even though Zhao Qingfeng was standing on the opposite side of Ling Han, he still couldn't help but be moved by such elegance. Beautiful, truly beautiful. Though he could not see her true appearance, with such a perfect figure, added with that indescribably noble air about her, it made one want to prostrate themselves at her feet, willing to be her subject. Zhao Qingfeng hurriedly focused, and his eyes once again exuded a killing intent that could freeze others. In his life, there was only martial art, and only the path of becoming stronger. Any factor that would affect his strength would have to be abandoned. "You're courting death." The Empress humphed coldly and attacked brazenly. When everyone saw this, their expressions involuntarily became strange. Ling Han was extremely daring. In the past, he had dared to beat Zhao Qingfeng and trample on Alchemy apprentice Imo. So it turned out that the people by his side were also the same. Who cared if you were Zhao Qingfeng or Zhao Heifeng? They would directly fight. However, though the Empress was a fourth severance, how could she compare to Zhao Qingfeng? This was an emperor tier, and was even close to becoming a monarch tier. Aside from a limited few people, who else could suppress him at the same cultivation level? This thought had yet to form, and he saw the Empress suppress Zhao Qingfeng in an incredibly powerful manner. With a flick of her delicate hand, Zhao Qingfeng only had the strength to fight back. Too strong, how could she be so strong? Everyone was completely speechless. This kind of prodigy that might only appear once in an epic actually appeared one after another now. Was there still justice in this world? Fu Gaoyun and the others were even more stunned. They only knew that Ling Han was strong, but they did not know that the Empress was no less freakish. Now that they had witnessed the Empress's glory, they were all stunned. Grandmaster Zicheng stroked his beard and showed a smile. No wonder his little disciple had asked him for 2 natural peach seals. This little girl was indeed freakish, and had the potential to become a 5th severance. She was worth nurturing. In the first 200 moves, Zhao Qingfeng could still block, but after that he fell into an absolute disadvantage. After 400 moves, he could only take a beating. He was clearly no match for her, and anyone could come out. His defeat was already set in stone. After 2,000 moves, he threw up blood repeatedly, and his life hung by a thread. Trash. Lu Xianming humphed coldly. He stood to the side with the other holy sons and holy daughters, and when his eyes swept over Zhao Qingfeng, there was an expression of intense disdain. He had hoped that Zhao Qingfeng could cause some trouble for Ling Han, but he had never imagined that he could not even defeat a woman by Ling Han's side. Instead, he had become a foil, making Ling Han appear even more powerful. You, any woman by his side, are all supreme prodigies. Enough! An Immortal Palace tier elite jumped out and casually pressed a hand down, separating the Empress and Zhao Qingfeng. The Empress was extremely displeased, and she glared at that Immortal Palace tier elite, looking like she was going to beat him up. That Immortal Palace tier elite couldn't help but smile bitterly. Facing the Empress's exquisite beauty, it was actually very difficult for him to get angry. Of course, another reason was because of her relationship with Ling Han. She was the woman of a new holy son, so he naturally had to give her some face. Ling Han, are women the only thing you know how to do? Zhao Qingfeng was still shouting, his expression filled with indignation. This time, his strength had skyrocketed, and he was full of ambition, believing that he would definitely be able to defeat Ling Han. Never would he have imagined that he would already be defeated before the main character had even made a move. He was really about to explode in anger. The Empress was furious, and she glowered menacingly at Zhao Qingfeng, a supreme might exuding from her. Ling Han took a step forward, pressed a hand on the Empress's shoulder, and said with a smile, "Let me." The Empress nodded and took a step back. Ling Han retrieved a pill vial from Zhao Qingfeng and tossed it over, saying, "Don't say that I'm bullying you. Here, this is the Frost Jade Dew pill. It can temporarily suppress one's advantage and allow one to recover to their peak condition. However, it can only last for an hour." This was an extremely practical alchemical pill and could even save one's life at certain times. Zhao Qingfeng was astonished. He had not imagined that Ling Han would still accept the challenge under such circumstances, and had even given him a top-notch alchemical pill. He accepted the pill vial without hesitation, poured out the pill, and swallowed it, not even glancing at it. If Ling Han still dared to play tricks in this kind of situation, then would he still have the face to show his face in the future? "Aya!" Ling Han suddenly exclaimed, and searched his body, saying, Sorry, I took the wrong medicine. That is a strong laxative." Fuck. Zhao Qingfeng's face instantly twitched, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1900. Zhao Qingfeng stared blankly at Ling Han, an indescribably strange expression on his face. In his impression, Ling Han's battle prowess was actually about the same as his. It was just that the latter's defenses were stronger, and that was why he was defeated. Otherwise, in his first battle with Ling Han, he would have had countless chances to defeat Ling Han. But this time, there was an astonishing change in the battle prowess between the two of them. His most powerful strike was blocked by a single finger of Ling Han's. Ling Han had done it so easily, as if he was just a cat or dog. This made him think of Yan Xianlu. Before the latter had advanced into the fifth severance, he was as weak as could be in front of Yan Xianlu. What supreme prodigy! He was completely just a worm. Could this brat be a second Yan Xianlu? Thoughts raced through his mind, but the flesh on his face was falling off piece by piece. There was no blood, as if he had really turned into bronze. It was just that this bronze had decayed now, and that was why the pieces were falling off. That previous attack was his most glorious attack. If he succeeded, he would rise to a higher level, and if he failed, he would be doomed eternally. Qingfeng turned into dust, and the pieces flew off. Everyone was silent. No one could deny Zhao Qingfeng's strength. This was a prodigy that made even the holy sons of Celestial King Tirsex pale in comparison, but now he had died so worthlessly. Yes, he hadn't even managed to make Ling Han suffer a single injury. Zhao Qingfeng opened his mouth and said the last words of his life, "You are indeed very strong, but I admit defeat. You definitely can't be a match for the Lord Holy Sun. If I die, you won't live for long either, because with your personality, it is impossible that you would submit to the Lord Holy Sun, and this is something that the Lord Holy Sun would definitely not allow." As he spoke, his movements were slightly larger and immediately caused the speed of the wind to accelerate. When he finished speaking, his whole person had also turned into pieces, drifting in the wind. The life aura and brand that belonged to him had completely disappeared. From now on, there was no more Zhao Qingfeng in this world. Ling Han, however, broke into a smile. Whether it was Zhao Qingfeng's warning or threat before his death, it didn't affect his Dao heart in the slightest. In a battle of the same cultivation level, he feared no one. So what if it was Yan Xianlu? He could only become a stepping stone on his path to greatness, allowing him to complete another self-transcendence. Grandmaster Zicheng also smiled. Though Zhao Qingfeng's death here was a major event, the Eternal Prosperity sect still had to be reasonable, right? Even if Yan Xianlu was unreasonable, he was only a holy son, a severing mundane tier holy son. Time, his little disciple needed time. As long as he had enough time, he would be able to look down on the world. Let's continue. Alchemist Zicheng said. Although there had been an unexpected turn of events, it had instead helped Ling Han. Of course, he would definitely investigate who had released Zhao Qingfeng. Wait! At this moment, someone interrupted. Fuck, what's wrong with everyone today? An old man walked out from the crowd with his hands behind his back, emitting a powerful aura. Lu Jin. Grandmaster Zicheng frowned. Lu Jin was a 3-star alchemist, but he also had another identity, and that was an ascending origin tier elite. Thus, Lu Jin had always thought very highly of himself, and was not very obedient. Moreover, he was indeed a prodigy of alchemy, and had the possibility of becoming a 4-star alchemist. But he suddenly jumped out at this time, causing Alchemist Zicheng to show an expression of displeasure. He did not mind using his authority as a chairperson to expel him. Chairperson Lu Jin clasped his hands at Alchemist Zicheng, his expression proud. He did not take Grandmaster Zicheng seriously. When everyone saw this, they all gasped. Previously, Zhao Qingfeng's appearance was already very strange, and now another Lu Jin had appeared. Could it be that some unforeseen event was about to occur in Alchemy City? What is it? Alchemist Zicheng showed an expression of displeasure. Of all times, he had to jump out at this time. However, he was also a 3-star alchemist, and more so an ascending origin tier elite, so he had to give him some face. I have an important matter. Lu Jin said loudly, his voice like thunder, rolling out. Under the might of an ascending origin tier elite, Ling Han's radiance instantly dissipated completely. What important matter do you have that you have to say it at this time? Alchemist Zicheng asked menacingly. If you cannot give me a sufficient reason, no matter who you are, I will still beat you. Lu Jin's lips curved up in a smile, and he said, because in front of this matter, a mere ceremony to elect a new holy son can be cast aside. What arrogance! Now, we have invited guests from all over the world. Not only have countless 3-star forces come, but there are also many 4-star forces, all for the sake of a new holy son. But now you say that it can be cast aside? This boast is going to reach the heavens. Oh! Alchemist Zicheng could not be bothered to waste words anymore. He looked at Lu Jin. If he could not give a reasonable explanation, he would not give him any face. Because I. Lu Jin pointed at himself, his voice suddenly becoming countless times louder. Have already broken through to become a 4-star alchemist. 4-star alchemist, 4-star alchemist, 4-star alchemist. All of a sudden, there were only these 4 words echoing in the whole plaza. Everyone was stunned, and only after at least a dozen or so heartbeats passed did someone take a deep breath. Then, a commotion broke out in the plaza. 4-star alchemist. There were only 3 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City, and in fact in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. Ascending to this position was equivalent to becoming a Celestial King. What kind of concept was a Celestial King? This was indeed a major matter. In comparison, an additional Holy Son was really a small matter that did not even need to be mentioned. It was too insignificant. Previously, Grandmaster Zicheng could still use his status in alchemy to suppress Lu Jin, but now, their status was equal. 4-star alchemists were too transcendent. If there was internal conflict among 4-star alchemists, it was extremely possible that it would lead to the collapse of Alchemy City. This was because there were too few 4-star alchemists, and any one of them could become a supreme force. Alchemist Zicheng paused slightly. He was thinking about many things. Lu Jin had broken through to become a 4-star alchemist, and Zhao Qingfeng had broken through the obstacles to arrive here. Now, it seemed like they had all come together. Not simple. The elder's expression did not change. He had lived for trillions of years, so he definitely had this much subtlety. He calmly asked, "Do you have proof?" "This is a 4-star celestial pill that I just refined 11 days ago. You guys can appraise it." Lu Jin flicked his finger. Xiao, a white light shot in the direction of Alchemist Chu Yi. It was actually not given to Alchemist Zicheng, but to Alchemist Chu Yi. There was something mysterious about this. Alchemist Chu Yi was currently raising a wine gourd and drinking to his heart's content. When the pill bottle flew over, he stretched out a hand and lightly grabbed it. A white pill bottle appeared in his hand. There was a hint of reluctance on his face, and he reluctantly placed the wine gourd down. He then undid the seal on the pill bottle. This kind of celestial pill was really too valuable. Even a tiny bit of its aura leaking out would be a massive loss. It had to be sealed and stored. Alchemist Zicheng and Alchemist Heavenly Heart both scooted over to take a look. The surrounding people also did the same. They all stood on their tiptoes. Wang, before the pill had even appeared, a wisp of green aura rose up from the bottle. It did not dissipate into the air, but rather transformed into the appearance of a little fox. Its eyes were extremely large, and it was extremely adorable. Chapter 1901. Grandmaster Zicheng and the others all wore solemn expressions. The higher the level of an alchemical pill, the more bizarre it would be, and for a 4-star alchemical pill, it was very normal for its medicinal power to take the form of a beast. No, this is not the medicinal power taking the form of a beast, but rather a celestial pill, Alchemist Heavenly Heart immediately said. He was a life form formed from a celestial pill, so he was most sensitive to this. Alchemist Zicheng and Chu Yi were both given a fright. Concocting a celestial pill with a life form. This was not the ability of a 4-star alchemist, but a 5-star alchemist. No, an ordinary 5-star alchemist was not enough. It had to be a 5-star alchemist that had immersed himself in this field for countless years and reached the pinnacle. How could this be a 4-star alchemist? Alchemist Heavenly Heart exclaimed in surprise, and couldn't help but look disappointed. It's true that the medicinal power has taken the form of a beast, but this is not a true life form. Rather, some kind of seal has been deliberately added into the alchemical pill, causing it to seem like a life form. He had initially thought that he had found a fellow alchemical pill, but he had not expected that he would only be disappointed. Grandmaster Zicheng moved, channeling some kind of celestial technique, and this little azure fox immediately returned to a ball of qi. A gaseous celestial pill. The 3 alchemists exchanged a look and said in unison, "Azure Cloud Pill." Among 4-star celestial pills, the Azure Cloud Pill was the easiest to concoct. Thus, any alchemist that attempted to break through to the 4-star level would basically choose to concoct the Azure Cloud Pill. However, no matter how easy it was still a 4-star celestial pill. It has not been more than a month since it was concocted. The 3 great alchemists naturally could easily make this judgment. If they did not even have this little bit of insight, they would not be worthy of being called 4-star alchemists. Clearly, this was not a 4-star alchemical pill that Lu Jin had found somewhere and then lied about having concocted it himself to gain the title of a 4-star alchemist. Alchemist Zicheng sealed the pill bottle again and then tossed it back to Lu Jin, saying, "Not bad, this is indeed a 4-star alchemical pill. Congratulations on breaking through to become a 4-star alchemist, Brother Lu. This is also a great joy for our alchemy city. We have another 4-star alchemist." He laughed loudly. "Today is a day of double happiness. We have another 4-star alchemist, as well as a talented holy son." The old man's reaction was extraordinarily fast, and he purposely put Lu Jin's breakthrough and Ling Han's ascension together. This was because he knew very well that Lu Jin had jumped out at this moment, which was definitely to target Ling Han. Of course, to say that a 4-star alchemist was deliberately making things difficult for a measly 1-star alchemist, a measly severing mundane tier cultivator, was a little too much. The final arrow should have been aimed at him. At this level of the game, it looked calm on the surface, but in reality, It was filled with the flashes of blades and shadows of swords. Who knew how many people would be involved? Yet Lu Jin waved his hand and said, "Brother Zicheng, you've been in the position of chairperson for almost 300 billion years, right?" All of a sudden, alchemist Zicheng's heart thumped. His gaze instantly became sharp and he said, "Not bad. Your memory is very good." According to the rules of the sect, the chairperson changes every 300 billion years. Lu Jin stared at Grandmaster Zicheng and said, "I suggest that we immediately choose a holy son as the successor." Forced to abdicate, realization dawned on alchemist Zicheng. No wonder Ling Han had rushed over in such a hurry. As it turned out, he was aiming for the position of chairperson. In Alchemy City, there was indeed such a rule. The chairperson could only hold the position for 300 billion years, and when the time was up, he would have to abdicate. Originally, there were still 200 million to 300 million years before alchemist Zicheng retired. There was enough time for him to raise Ling Han's alchemy prowess. And who, under ordinary circumstances, would have dared suggest to him that it was time to appoint his successor? Grandmaster Tian Xen and Grandmaster Chu Yi did not care at all. Alchemist Zicheng could naturally take his time to choose, but now that Lu Jin had broken through to become a 4-star alchemist, he had the right to force him to abdicate. Why did he have to do this? One had to know that even if he had become a 4-star alchemist, his status was still far inferior to alchemist Zicheng's. Why did he have to offend alchemist Zicheng? Because Lu Jin had another identity, and that was Lu Xianming's master. Thus, all of this was actually targeted at Ling Han. However, attacking him was not the final goal, but rather for the position of chairperson of Alchemy City. If a holy son was chosen as the successor now, there naturally would not be a place for Ling Han. He had not gone through this ceremony, so he naturally could not be considered a holy son. Then, how could he have the right? Taking a step back, even if Ling Han had the right, how could he compete with the other holy sons now? He had only just advanced into the ranks of 1-star alchemists. This move was very vicious, and of course very coincidental. If Lu Jin had not coincidentally become a 4-star alchemist, then it would not have any power at all. If one wanted to become a holy son, they had to obtain the approval of all 4-star alchemists. Thus, if Lu Jin objected later, Ling Han would not be able to become a holy son. Then, the holy son that had the highest chance of standing out would be Lu Xianming. For his disciple, and more so for the position of chairperson of Alchemy City, Lu Jin was willing to go all out. "I know when to choose a successor." Grandmaster Zicheng showed an expression of displeasure. Lu Jin had only just become a 4-star alchemist, but he had nurtured 3 4-star alchemists, so how could he take Lu Jin seriously? They were both 4-star alchemists, but their level of spirit refinement was different, so there was still a very, very big gap between them. Then I also firmly object to Ling Han becoming the new holy son. Lu Jin shook his head and said, "This boy is too good at causing trouble. He killed 2 successors of Celestial King tier sects, and just now he forced Zhao Qingfeng to his death, offending the Eternal Prosperity sect. If we still promote him to become a holy son, wouldn't that be a slap to the face of those celestial kings?" These words were not completely to make things difficult. It was just that the matter of Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng had basically been settled by Grandmaster Zicheng, and Zhao Qingfeng had also been released by him. Now, he was blaming it on Ling Han. He was really shameless enough. Alchemist Zicheng's expression was dark, and he showed strong displeasure. In fact, he had not chosen Ling Han as the holy son out of any selfish motives. Otherwise, which of his 3 previous disciples would not have the right to inherit the position of chairperson? But Lu Jin? For the sake of his disciple, he was really unscrupulous and shameless. However, Lu Jin indeed had a great advantage. As long as he did not agree, Ling Han could not possibly become a holy son, and he had the absolute initiative. Then, after 300 million years, alchemist Zicheng would eventually have to abdicate, so the possibility of Lu Xianming succeeding the position was extremely high. Alchemist Zicheng looked at Lu Jin, and Lu Jin also looked at alchemist Zicheng. Their eyes met, and they silently communicated about something. After a while, Grandmaster Zicheng spoke and said, 3 years later, we will choose a successor from among the holy sons and holy daughters. Lu Jin also said, I also agree that Ling Han will become the new holy son. The two mighty figures each took a step back and reached an agreement. On the surface, Lu Jin had a great advantage. It was a mere 3 years, and even if Ling Han stayed in the time cultivation chamber every day, that was only 300 years, so how far could he grow? Could he compete with Lu Xianming? And this was also the longest time that alchemist Zicheng could fight for. After all, the longer the time was delayed, the more variables could occur. Alchemist Zicheng was willing to agree to a time limit of 3 years because he had taken into account Ling Han's comprehension ability in alchemy. Only he knew that Ling Han could already perform spirit refinement. 3 years later, it was extremely likely that Ling Han would become a 2-star alchemist, and he would also reach second refinement in spirit refinement. Then, he would be qualified to compete with the other holy sons and holy daughters. Chapter 1902. After the two big shots reached an agreement, the ceremony continued. Ling Han glanced at Lu Jin and then at Lu Xianming, who had a smug smile on his face. He couldn't help but reveal a meaningful smile. Does Lu Xianming think he's going to win? For others, a mere 3 years couldn't change anything. After entering the time cultivation room, it would only be 300 years. Wanting to make a huge breakthrough in alchemy in 300 years, wasn't this a joke? However, Ling Han had the reincarnation tree, which was a supreme dharma treasure that could reverse the situation. You're just a petty person who's intoxicated by success. Sooner or later, you'll be dealt with. Ling Han did not take it to heart. There was nothing about Lu Xianming that was worthy of his attention. Of course, becoming a holy son was not something that could be done just because one wanted to. Ling Han had to display his abilities in alchemy. Not only did he have to answer some old alchemist's strange questions, which were naturally related to alchemy and medicinal theory, he even had to concoct a pill in front of everyone. After fully proving his talent in alchemy, he passed the test and was finally crowned. This step of coronation was exceptionally solemn and dignified. Ling Han's name would be engraved on the absolute beginning stone of Alchemy City, and when a new chairperson was born among these holy sons and holy daughters, everyone's name would be erased. Only one person could be listed on the list of past sect lords, while the others would be replaced by the next generation of holy sons and holy daughters. After alchemist Zicheng announced that Ling Han was the 10th holy son of this generation of Alchemy City, an immortal palace tier elite immediately moved and began to write Ling Han's name on the absolute beginning stone. This was derived from the primal chaos source rock and was extremely hard. Normally, it was used to record the glorious achievements of the ancestors. In the ancient realm, the absolute beginning stone could absorb all attacks, and only Genesis tier elites could surpass its limits and cause damage. After coming to the immortal territory, there were many people who could destroy the primordial stone, but it was still used as a record. However, even for an immortal palace tier elite, it would still take a great deal of effort to write down a person's name. Otherwise, there would be no need for an immortal palace tier elite to do it personally. This was not just a matter of dignity. Hong long long, only to hear a loud sound, a burning cloud appeared on the horizon, surging with boundless fiery light, quickly rushing over from the distance. Only, was this really a burning cloud? Why would it release an earth-shaking and mountain-shaking noise? At first, that immortal palace tier elite had been concentrating on carving Ling Han's name. However, after being startled, his hand instantly slipped, and the Ling character on Ling Han's name became crooked. Although he could still recognize that it was a Ling character, it was incredibly ugly. This expert couldn't help but reveal a look of anger. Didn't they see that he was carving some words? Who dared to scare him and even succeeded? Humph! Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but humph loudly. He raised his head to look at the sky, and loudly said, "Which clan are you from? How can you be so unruly? Could this Huo Yun be an expert?" Everyone raised their heads. The speed of the fiery cloud was especially fast. In just a short while, it had already surged over. Even though they were separated by a long distance, and even though they were protected by the array, it still made everyone feel a terrible heat wave. They could only feel a burning pain. Hong, the flames faded, and a massive battleship appeared. It rapidly slowed down from its rapid speed, and finally hovered in the sky. On this battleship, there was shockingly a lightning-shaped symbol. Thundercloud Palace. Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but humph softly, his voice filled with strong displeasure. His expression became serious. He had already personally made a trip to the Thundercloud Palace and the Zai clan to resolve these two grudges for Ling Han. Though the two great celestial king tier forces were very displeased, their heir had been killed in a fair battle. Logically speaking, they wouldn't send any powerful figures to seek revenge on Ling Han. Since Alchemist Zicheng had personally come to apologize, he had also given sufficient compensation. Most importantly, the Rock Palace was really not to be trifled with. Thus, the two great celestial king tier forces reluctantly agreed not to pursue and kill Ling Han. In reality, if it weren't for Alchemist Zicheng's visit, they wouldn't have known that the two Ling Han were actually the same person. But now, the Thundercloud Palace actually came. It was very coincidental. Lu Jin had just become a 4-star alchemist, and almost ruined the matter of Ling Han becoming a holy son, and then, the Thundercloud Palace came over. There had to be something strange about this. Could it be that the two of them had colluded together? Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but glance at Lu Jin, yet Lu Jin's expression was calm, and there wasn't the slightest bit of emotion on his face. Having reached this kind of cultivation level, and standing in such a high position, he naturally wouldn't show his emotions. "Ha, you didn't miss the good day, did you?" With a long laugh, a burly man walked down from the skies. Every step he took was a few miles, and with 3 or 4 steps, he landed on the plaza. This naturally triggered the attacks of the formations in the city, but when they landed on that man's body, there was only a splash of dazzling light, and there was no way to wound him in the slightest. Ba Yao, Alchemist Zicheng's expression tightened, and an intense expression of wariness appeared on his face. Just like how there was still the difference between 1st refinement, 2nd refinement, 5th refinement, and 7th refinement among 4-star alchemists, martial art was naturally the same. This Ba Yao was one of the few ascending origin tier elites of the Thundercloud Palace. When he was young, he had the status of a holy son, and after advancing into the ascending origin tier, he had become an elder of the Thundercloud Palace. At that time, he had been incredibly domineering, defeating a great many holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier level forces, and was thought to have a sliver of hope of becoming a celestial king. Unfortunately, after several tens of billions of years had passed, he was still stuck at the ascending origin tier. However, he, an ascending origin tier, was definitely a top-notch existence among his peers in terms of battle prowess. Just like the 7th refinement and 8th refinement of 4-star alchemists, he was practically known as the strongest below celestial king tier. Of course, whether he was the strongest or not was only a compliment given to him by some people. In truth, who knew exactly how strong the strongest ascending origin tier was? Grandmaster Zicheng, Grandmaster Chu Yi, Grandmaster Wen Tian, and Grandmaster Lu Jin. Ba Yao called out as his eyes swept over each of the 4 great alchemists. In the end, his eyes stopped on Lu Jin and showed a smile. Alchemist Zicheng and Ling Han were both startled. This Ba Yao had just arrived, so how did he know that Lu Jin had already advanced to 4-star? Obviously, they had long since contacted each other. He had come with ill intentions. This is the outrageously audacious Ling Han? Ba Yao did not care about the reactions of the 4 great alchemists, and instead looked towards Ling Han, appearing to be incredibly presumptuous. He, too, had this kind of qualification. In terms of battle prowess, he was already one of the best in the ascending origin tier. Furthermore, Alchemy City could not concoct a celestial that could help him advance another level. Then, having no desires, he would be firm. He did not need to lower his voice to alchemists. This junior is Ling Han. As for whether I am outrageously audacious or not, that will depend on who I am facing, Ling Han said, neither servile nor overbearing. Gasp. Everyone was rendered speechless. This guy was still saying that he was outrageously audacious. Asking for Ling Han's help, But he had already talked back in front of an ascending origin tier elite. Was that not outrageously audacious? Hee hee. Ba Yao instead laughed and then laughed wildly. All of a sudden, his laughter suddenly stopped, and he stared menacingly at Ling Han. Audacious maniac, you actually dare kill the holy son of my sect. Though Grandmaster Zicheng has spoken on your behalf, the death penalty can be spared, but punishment cannot be forgiven. You, kneel. Chapter 1904. Don't even think about it. Lu Jin suddenly jumped up, pointing at Grandmaster Zicheng, looking flustered and exasperated. If he really was expelled from Alchemy City, that would be a humiliation that could never be washed away, and he would be laughed at wherever he went. Alchemist Zicheng completely ignored him, and only turned to Grandmaster Chu Yi and Grandmaster Wen Tian. What do the two of you say? His expression was frosty, and his aura was domineering, with an indescribable dominance. Who said he only knew alchemy? Everyone was stunned by Grandmaster Zicheng's aura, and felt their hearts surge, their scalps numb. Grandmaster Zicheng was really bold, abandoning a 4-star alchemist just like that. It should be known that on the surface, there were only 4 4-star alchemists in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm, and each of them was an influential and supreme being that could influence a region. Brother Zicheng, you are the chairperson of Alchemy City, so what you say naturally goes. Grandmaster Chu Yi took a sip of wine, appearing indifferent. However, he added, Alchemy City has always only had 3 4-star alchemists, and that's fine. This implied that he agreed. 3 4-star alchemists are enough, and we don't need this kind of traitor. Meanwhile, Grandmaster Wen Tian was expressionless. He was different, and his way of thinking was different. He said, fine. Aside from new alchemical pills and life forms, there were not many things that could attract his interest. So what if there was 1 more 4-star alchemist or 1 less? He did not care at all. Hearing the conversation between these 3, everyone felt their mouths twitch, and they did not dare to believe it. A 4-star alchemist was actually expelled in just a few words? This was practically child's play. Scram! Grandmaster Zicheng pointed at Lu Jin. This time he was truly angered. He actually dared to have designs on his disciple, causing the old man to completely explode. You can't expel me. I am a 4-star alchemist. Lu Jin's face was pale, and he shouted loudly, you are abusing your position to avenge a personal grudge. I don't accept this, I don't accept this. So what? Grandmaster Zicheng scoffed. So what if I am abusing my position to avenge a personal grudge? His 2 consecutive rhetorical questions caused Lu Jin to fall silent, his face shockingly pale. Grandmaster Zicheng's status in the alchemy world was really too high. In the past, he, a mere alchemy apprentice, could do as he pleased in Alchemy City, not even taking a 3-star alchemist seriously. Then, Grandmaster Zicheng was naturally even more awesome. He had nurtured 3 4-star alchemists, so what kind of achievement was this? In the world of alchemy, Grandmaster Zicheng was like a colossal tree that reached into the heavens. If it weren't for the fact that he lacked some fated opportunities, he might even have had the chance to become a 5-star alchemist. Ho ho, I have no choice but to speak a word of fairness, Ba Yao interrupted. The Thundercloud Hall and Lu Jin had a secret deal, and the Thundercloud Hall would do their best to help Lu Jin's line ascend to the position of chairperson of Alchemy City, and in return, Alchemy City would give the Thundercloud Hall a large amount of alchemical pills for free or at an extremely discounted price every year. As for dealing with Ling Han, it was just a matter of convenience. Who would have thought that this kind of suppression would actually provoke such a strong backlash from Grandmaster Zicheng? A dignified 4-star alchemist, how can he be expelled just like that? Ba Yao asked solemnly. Who do you think you are? Is there any place for you to speak here? Alchemist Zicheng immediately pointed a finger at Ba Yao, his disdain indescribable. Who was he? He was a king among 4-star alchemists. From a certain perspective, he was a celestial king. No matter how invincible you, Ba Yao, were in the ascending origin tier, could you be used as a celestial king? If you weren't, then shut up. What right did you have to interrupt in front of him? Get lost! Alchemist Zicheng shouted. Ling Han's heart surged. So beneath his greed for money, this master of his still hid such a domineering side. However, ordinarily, he did not need to reveal his domineering side at all to suppress everything. Now that he was enraged, it finally exploded out. He was also very moved. Grandmaster Zicheng had risen in anger because of him. Otherwise, Ba Yao was a member of a celestial king tier level sect, and he himself was also an ascending origin tier elite. How could he be so easily humiliated? Ba Yao's expression turned cold and he said, Grandmaster Zicheng, be a little more polite with your words. I give you 3 breaths to get lost. Otherwise, I will spare no expense to summon all the elites in this world to hunt you down until you die. Grandmaster Zicheng said menacingly. If you don't believe me, you can try. When these words were spoken, Ba Yao's aura was instantly completely suppressed. Invincible in the ascending origin tier? Heh, that was just empty words. Among ascending origin tier forces, he, a king tier of ascending origin tier, could indeed be invincible, but it was not like the Thundercloud Palace was the only celestial king tier force in this world. Could it be that the other celestial king tier level sects did not have holy sons and holy daughters of the previous generation who had cultivated to the ascending origin tier, but were unable to break through, yet tempered the ascending origin tier to become incredibly powerful? If a 4-star alchemist spared no expense, he would definitely be able to take out something that would tempt those elites. Then he would really be in danger. The Thundercloud Palace was only a first heaven celestial king tier force, while the Eastern Celestial Realm had 2nd heaven, 3rd heaven, 7th heaven, and 8th heaven celestial king tier forces. So what if they killed him? Could it be that they were afraid that the Thundercloud Celestial King would seek revenge? Just like that person from the Rock Palace. So what if he came from the Zai clan or the Thundercloud Hall? He killed him without saying anything. As long as one's background was strong enough, one would be able to act with confidence and not be lenient when the time came. 1. Grandmaster Zicheng began to count, a sinister look in his eyes. 2. Ba Yao's expression changed drastically. In the end, he did not dare to gamble on Grandmaster Zicheng's determination. With a humph, he leapt up and was already flying towards the battleship in the skies. Grandmaster Zicheng did not even give him a look and turned to Lu Jin. You can also get lost. No, you can't do this. I'm a 4-star alchemist. I'm a 4-star alchemist. Lu Jin called out loudly, slightly hysterical. Grandmaster Zicheng waved his sleeve and said, Brother Gu, Brother Chang, Brother Zhao, chase this person out. Immediately, 3 ascending origin tier elites walked out. Aside from alchemists, there were similarly cultivators in Alchemy City. They were the true core strength that guarded Alchemy City. Alchemists, the majority of their time would definitely be spent on alchemy. Brother Lu, please, these 3 people said to Lu Jin, expressionless. When Lu Jin saw this, he knew that there was already no room for redemption. His hands involuntarily clenched into fists, his heart filled with regret. Why didn't he just stop while he was ahead? Previously, he had the upper hand, yet greedily went to chase after Grandmaster Zicheng, and the result was that he had suffered a head-on blow. Not only had he lost all his advantage, he had even suffered a crushing defeat. Only now did he know how far apart he was from Grandmaster Zicheng. It was not something that could really be considered equal just because they were both 4-star alchemists. How regretful! He sighed and turned to leave. His figure was stooped and filled with desolation. He was completely different from his previous high-spirited self. Everyone sighed in shock. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Everything had changed too quickly. At the beginning, merely Lu Jin alone had forced Grandmaster Zicheng to retreat step by step, forcing him to make all kinds of compromises. In the end, when Ba Yao, this powerful reinforcement, arrived, it instead sounded the horn of Grandmaster Zicheng's counterattack. This was probably how the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Grandmaster Zicheng swept an eye over the holy sons and holy daughters, and saw that Lu Xianming was currently shivering. He calmly said, 3 years later, the matter of selecting a successor will proceed as per normal. Chapter 1905. Everyone was confused. Previously, it was clear that Grandmaster Zicheng had been forced to make a concession and agreed to hold the selection of a successor 3 years later. But now, Lu Jin had clearly been dealt with, and added with Grandmaster Zicheng's current domineering aura. Even if he said that Ling Han would directly take over, there probably wouldn't be many people who would dare to object. Even if that wasn't the case, it could be changed and the deadline could be pushed back, such as 10,000 years or 100,000 years. For immortals, this wasn't a long time, but it would give Ling Han enough time to grow. Why should we stand by our original decision? This was the difference between Grandmaster Zicheng and Lu Jin. He was a man of his word. Everyone was filled with admiration for Grandmaster Zicheng in their hearts. No wonder he could sit as the chairperson of Alchemy City for so long, and everyone respected him. Merely from this aspect, even Lu Jin could not compare to him. Ling Han looked towards Grandmaster Zicheng, only to see an enigmatic smile on the old man's face. He knew that this was Grandmaster Zicheng adding pressure and motivation to him. However, everyone had thought too highly of Grandmaster Zicheng. Ling Han could easily guess that if he still hadn't reached the same heights as Lu Xianming and the others in 3 years, then Alchemist Zicheng would indeed still start the selection of a successor. However, this selection could take 1 or 2 years, or it could also take 8 or 10 years, or even several million years. Who said he had to decide right away? He had lived for trillions of years. What a cunning old fox. No, wily old fox. Lu Xianming heaved a sigh of relief. He was worried that he would be punished as well. He didn't expect that not only would he be safe, but he would also be chosen as the successor 3 years later. He would definitely defeat everyone in 3 years and return with limitless glory. Now, he had to keep a low profile. Even if someone stepped on his face, he wouldn't flare up. He couldn't let anyone get the slightest chance to flare up, lest he lost the right to compete. However, he had thought too much. Regardless of whether it was Alchemist Zicheng or Ling Han, neither of them had taken him seriously. Continue. Grandmaster Zicheng waved his hand and sat back down. He closed his eyes, looking like a tired old man. But who dares underestimate him? He had chased away a king tier of the ascending origin tier and chased away a 4-star alchemist. Just how domineering was this? The celebration began. The representatives of the various 3-star forces and 4-star forces all took turns to express their congratulations to Ling Han, and also presented him with heavy gifts. At first, there hadn't been so many gifts, but considering how much Grandmaster Zicheng doted on Ling Han, he had added quite a lot at the last minute. Ling Han did not stand on ceremony. He did not reject anyone. The more the better. This caused Grandmaster Zicheng, who occasionally glanced at him, to feel extremely gratified. His little disciple really had his style, and was as greedy as his life. Good, very good. First, it was the representatives of the 4-star forces, and then the 3-star forces. For example, the representatives of the Lunar Sect and the Beiyu clan all stepped forward to offer their congratulations, and offered generous gifts to Ling Han, but the expressions on their faces were naturally incredibly awkward. They had to congratulate their enemies with a smile on their faces, which made them feel awkward. But what could they do? He was the holy son of a 4-star force, and any ascending origin tier elite would be able to defeat them easily. She only hoped that Ling Han could forget about the past. You guys prepare more godly metal. I'm a very forgetful person, Ling Han said with a smile. The representatives of the Lunar Sect and the others were all dumbfounded. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually extort them in public? Thankfully, as long as he was willing to ask for benefits, then hatred could be easily resolved. Furthermore, godly metal wasn't anything valuable. Pseudo-divine metal was valuable, and divine metal was lethal. Even celestial kings wouldn't be able to produce it. The status of the Fu clan was relatively too low. They were very, very late in their turn, and only then were they qualified to come over to offer their congratulations. Holy Sun Ling, congratulations. Fu Gaoyan clasped his hands together, feeling incredibly rueful inside. Ling Han was really too miraculous. Meanwhile, Fu Xiaoyan's expression was dim. The instant Ling Han broke off relations with the Fu clan, it was already decided that it was completely impossible between them. Ling Han deliberately said a few more words to Fu Gaoyun, giving Fu Gaoyun enough face. True enough, when Fu Gaoyun retreated, he was surrounded by a great many people, asking all sorts of questions. They were all trying to find out the relationship between him and Ling Han. Being able to become the friend of this red holy sun, he was naturally worth roping in. In this way, Fu Gaoyun should be almost certain to inherit the position of clan leader of the Fu clan in future. Towards friends, Ling Han had always been selfless. If he could help them, he would help them to the end. Your ass? Situ Xiaojun walked over, an expression of intense curiosity on her face. Stop. Ling Han hurriedly stopped her. I'm fine, there's no need for you to worry about me. Che, you're so secretive. You definitely have something to hide, Situ Xiaojun mumbled, yet she was pulled to the side by Situ Tang with a smile. Xiang Yan also gave Ling Han a few words of encouragement. In the past, he had been very good to Ling Han, but he had definitely never thought that Ling Han would actually become the holy son of Alchemy City one day, which made him feel very rueful. The banquet was held for 3 days, and Ling Han's hands were sore from receiving so many gifts. When it was over, Ling Han immediately used the divine demon sword to swallow all the godly metal. Unfortunately, he still couldn't make the divine demon sword advance to 4-star pseudo-divine metal. He and the Empress both began to cultivate in seclusion. They both had the same goal, and that was to first reach the peak stage of the 4th severance, and then attempt to break through to the 5th severance, and Ling Han had another mission, and that was to become a 2-star alchemist within 3 years, and do his best to reach 2nd refinement in spirit refinement. In this way, he would no longer be the slightest bit weaker than the other holy sons and holy daughters, and at that time, it would be a matter of whose level of spirit refinement was higher. Ling Han entered the Black Tower, and comprehended the 2-star pill recipe under the reincarnation tree. This took him 30,000 years, and then he entered the time cultivation chamber to practice alchemy. From time to time, he would ask for guidance from alchemist Zicheng, and because his improvement was rapid, Grandmaster Zicheng would be very gentle and encouraging each time. This little disciple of his really could become a 2-star alchemist 3 years later, then he wouldn't have to play any tricks, and could really immediately choose a successor. Meanwhile, he could retire in peace, concoct alchemical pills, teach disciples, and so on. Oh, right, he had to let his little disciple have a few more children. He wanted to teach more outstanding alchemists. Taking advantage of the time when Ling Han was in seclusion, he began to choose a concubine for Ling Han. She had to have a certain level of alchemy, and only then could she combine the bloodlines of both parents could she possibly surpass her parents. Ling Han naturally didn't know. Otherwise, it was possible that he would have to escape from Alchemy City. Inside the Black Tower, under the reincarnation tree, time flew. When 2.5 years had passed in the outside world, Ling Han finally succeeded, and concocted his first 2-star celestial pill. After informing Grandmaster Zicheng, he did not stop, and began to perform spirit refinement again. 2nd refinement, this was the goal that he had to reach. He did not fall behind in martial art either. Grandmaster Zicheng was incredibly concerned about this little disciple of his, and threw cultivation resources at him as if they were free. He did not use the resources of Alchemy City, and the majority came from Grandmaster Zicheng's personal pockets. It should be known that Grandmaster Zicheng had a way of making money. He was a 4-star alchemist, and added with the accumulation of so many years, the richness of his wealth was unimaginable. This forcefully threw Ling Han to the late stage of the 4th severance, and because the Empress only needed to focus on cultivation, she reached the peak stage of the 4th severance, but to break through to the 5th severance, this could not be achieved by just immersing herself in cultivation. She needed an opportunity. Right at this moment, a messenger arrived at Alchemy City. Chapter 1906. This messenger came from the Eternal Prosperity Sect. When he arrived, Ling Han just so happened to come out of seclusion after 3 days, which could be considered a very coincidental event. Because the reputation of the Eternal Prosperity Sect was too great, this messenger was arranged to stay on the 4th floor for 3 days. The moment Ling Han came out of seclusion, someone went to pass on the news, and Ling Han temporarily did not begin the rest of his seclusion, though he really couldn't be bothered to go see anyone at this time. After a while, a young man appeared. He was dressed in black, and his cultivation level was at the 4th severance, possessing an awe-inspiring heroic spirit. He was only a messenger, yet he possessed the aura of a king tier. It could be seen what kind of talents Yan Xianlu had under his command. Quite haughty, actually making me wait for 3 days. The moment this young man in black arrived at Ling Han's place, he showed an expression of displeasure. Ling Han grumbled internally, pointed at the door and said, "The door is there, you can scram." The young man couldn't help but be startled. He had not thought that Ling Han would be so direct and domineering. His face alternated between red and green, and after a while, he said, "Ling Han, I have come on the orders of Lord Holy Sun." "Oh, which Holy Sun?" Ling Han asked disapprovingly. "Of course it's Holy Sun Yan Xianlu," the young man said proudly. "Aside from my lord, who else in the Eternal Prosperity sect is worthy of being called Holy Sun?" This was quite a boastful claim, but it was enough to show Yan Xianlu's might. He actually did not even have a single competitor. "Why is Yan Xianlu looking for me?" Ling Han crossed his legs as if he had not clearly heard the name Yan Xianlu. The young man sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Ling Han calmly, showing an expression of shock. "How dare you, actually daring to call Yan Xianlu's name directly?" He couldn't help but reprimand, "How dare you? Is the name of the Holy Sun something you can call directly?" Ling Han smirked coldly and said, "You came to my place and still want to teach me how to behave?" The young man wanted to make a move, but when he recalled Ling Han's past feats, he immediately gave up on the idea. He was indeed a king tier, but he was who knew how much weaker than Zhao Qingfeng. However, even Zhao Qingfeng had been killed by Ling Han, so what was he? If he made a move, he would be sending himself to death. When you see my lord, you'll know how big the gap between you and Lord Saint is," the young man said proudly. He took out a letter and flicked it towards Ling Han. "My lord invites you to attend the meeting." Ling Han took the letter but did not open it immediately. "In a year's time, there will be a gathering of geniuses at Broken Clouds Mountain," the young man said arrogantly. "Ling Han, do you know that those who can receive the invitation of my master are all holy sons of celestial king tier level sects? You are the only exception. The specific time and place are written on the letter, provided that you can get it." He paused for a moment before continuing, "This was personally written by my lord." Yan Xianlu had personally written it. Ling Han didn't think much of it at first, but now his interest was piqued. He began to open the envelope. There was a seal on it, which represented that the envelope was complete. When the seal was broken, a terrifying baleful aura was emitted from the envelope, as if it could split open the heavens. So powerful! Ling Han's heart clenched. When Yan Xianlu wrote, he must have also left behind his martial art intent on the letter. Now, the specific time and place of the invitation were all written on the letter, and he could only go when he arrived. This is a test. "I, Yan Xianlu, have invited you, but do you have the right to come?" One endless brilliant light surged, and the room was instantly filled with symbols of great Tao. It was as if a supreme elite was about to charge out of the envelope and give Ling Han a fatal blow. Ling Han showed a solemn expression, but his hands did not stop in the slightest, continuing to open the envelope. Yet the young man could not stand it anymore, and retreated continuously, a sliver of admiration appearing on his face. Ling Han was the first to bear the brunt of the attack, yet it was as if nothing had happened, yet he retreated continuously. The gap between them could be seen clearly. No wonder he could kill Zhao Qingfeng and receive the personal invitation of the Holy Sun. However, you only opened the envelope and did not open the letter. That was the true test. He watched quietly from the side and saw that Ling Han had already taken out the letter inside. It was folded into 4 thin folds. Ling Han continued to open the letter. A flash of golden light surged out, turning into a golden divine sword that slashed out at Ling Han. Ling Han casually pressed down and extinguished it. When he opened it again, another azure treasured saber slashed out. He pressed down again, and the treasured saber was also scattered by him. At this time, The letter had also been completely opened. One endless black light surged, and then turned into a fist that struck out at Ling Han with the power to look down on the whole world. A single punch could shatter the heavens, suppress the ages, and decide the universe. Domineering, arrogant. This was Yen Xianlu's martial art, and it exuded his invincible conviction. Ling Han, too, shot out a punch. This was a different kind of contest between the two of them. They could not rely on treasures like the divine demon sword, or else they would be at a disadvantage, and their invincible conviction would be shaken. Pung, the two fists collided. Ling Han's figure trembled slightly, and he retreated 3 steps, then stopped. He retreated another 7 steps, and only then did he finally hold the pole firmly, and there were 10 clear footprints on the tiles under his feet, each half a foot deep. That black fist also suddenly shattered, turning into black light again, and then forming a line of words, 3 Yang Peak, when the 3 stars gather. This line of words only appeared for an instant, and then suddenly shattered, turning into nothingness. Ling Han, the letter has been delivered. Farewell, the young man said, a hint of admiration on his face. Being able to receive a blow from the Lord Holy Sun, his strength was really strong. Of course, compared to the Lord Holy Sun, he was not even worthy to carry the Holy Sun's shoes. It should be known that the Holy Sun had only casually written the letter, and Ling Han had still retreated 10 steps, using all his strength. The comparison of strength could not be any clearer. Ling Han ignored him. He looked at that letter, and because Yen Xianlu's martial art intent had already leaked out, the letter had also become blank. If he couldn't take that punch, he would only get a blank piece of paper. This was Yen Xianlu's dominance. I'm inviting you, but are you qualified? Ling Han showed a faint smile, his eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Honestly speaking, he was indeed no match for Yen Xianlu at present. Just from that punch previously, he knew that Yen Xianlu had definitely advanced into the 5th severance. Otherwise, he would not have that kind of absolute dominance. If it were not for the fact that this was only a letter, and only contained a sliver of Yen Xianlu's martial intent, and if he had directly delivered a punch, Ling Han would have at least spat out a mouthful of blood. There is still 1 year, and I have to break through to the 5th severance, Ling Han mumbled. He had already decided to keep his appointment. Perhaps Yen Xianlu can give me enough pressure, and allow me to obtain the opportunity to push open the door to the 5th severance. The heavenly Tao Jade was not omnipotent. It only increased that tiny sliver of hope. The key still depended on himself. However, the most important thing now is the 2nd refinement. Half a year later, we will see the truth. I'll put the matter of Yen Xianlu aside for now. Ling Han rubbed his chin, feeling that his time was really packed, and completely not enough. Chapter 1908. Another person brimming with confidence was Kansas. He did not have any crystal, nor did he have any plant-dividing soul, but his alchemy level was indeed the most outstanding among all the holy sons and holy daughters. Though they were all 2-star alchemists, and similarly could only perform 2nd refinement, the quality of his completed pill could reach high grade, surpassing other people's starting point of medium grade and low grade, and in terms of spirit refinement, his 1st refinement level was praised by all alchemists. Every spirit refinement was very important. It did not mean that 2nd refinement was more important just because 2nd refinement was harder than 1st refinement. That was not the case. Every spirit refinement was improving the quality of the celestial pill, and every spirit refinement was crucial. However, after spirit refinement, it was as if the alchemical pill also had a resistance, causing spirit refinement to become more and more difficult. Just based on his 1st refinement, he had the right to look down on 99% of alchemists. Otherwise, how could he have been chosen as a holy son? Now, these 10 people definitely all had their own strong points. After all, holy daughters and holy daughters represented the face of a force. In the alchemy room, the 10 people first concocted the celestial pill. Some were happy, while others were sad, because some people could not withstand the pressure, and the quality of the alchemical pill they concocted was poor. At first, it could reach medium grade, but now, it actually fell to low grade. Among them, Oken was naturally the proudest. The alchemical pill in his hands had reached high grade, matching his strength, and did not lose its level because of the pressure. "The position of future chairperson will definitely be mine," he said in a voice that only he could hear. "Ling Han, Lu Xianming, just you wait. When I ascend to the position, it will be the day of your death." In comparison to alchemy, the time spent on spirit refinement was much less. If there was no failure, half a day's time was enough, and second refinement only needed a short day. Thus, those who did not reach their expectations during alchemy would start their second attempt. A little over 3 months' time was enough for each person to refine 3 times. Additionally, if spirit refinement failed, then the alchemical pill would be useless. Thus, even those who concocted an ideal alchemical pill would concoct a few more to deal with the possibility of spirit refinement failing. However, they were not in a rush. They could completely concoct alchemical pills and perform spirit refinement, and then decide if they wanted to continue concocting the next cauldron of alchemical pills according to the situation. A month later, Oken was the first to end the trial. He pushed open the door of the alchemy chamber and walked out, an incredibly confident smile on his face. The initial quality of the pill he had concocted was high grade. Furthermore, he had performed 2 spirit enhancements, the first of which was perfect, and the second of which was ordinary. All in all, he had achieved a breakthrough. That was why he was so confident. After a short while, Lu Xianming also pushed open the door and walked out, holding a pill in his hand. He was just as confident. The starting point of the elixir he was concocting was mid-grade, but because he had fused it with the lacking earth essence, he was able to perform 2 spirit refinements to perfection. This result was about the same as Okan's, but his advantage lay in his youth. If their results were the same, then he would naturally be the victor. After another while, Qin Guyu came out as well. Her face carried a look of exhaustion, but her eyes were extremely bright. She held the immortal pill in her hand, using her own cultivation to seal the pill's aura so that it wouldn't leak out. She didn't show the pill to anyone else. She wanted to amaze everyone with a single brilliant feat. None of them were in a hurry. They were also full of confidence in themselves as they headed towards the remaining 7 pill refining rooms. These were pill refining rooms that were specially used for observation and competition. Thus, the walls on all 4 sides were transparent from the outside, but the insides were not visible from the outside. This way, people could observe properly, and the people inside could also concentrate. What is he doing? Someone suddenly pointed at the pill refining room that Ling Han was in, his expression incredibly shocked. Because after Ling Han had concocted an alchemical pill, he actually crushed it after taking a whiff of it. This definitely couldn't be a useless pill. Firstly, if the concoction had failed, then there wouldn't be any alchemical pill left at all. Secondly, judging from the color and luster of this alchemical pill, it should have reached the level of mid-grade no matter what. You actually crushed it? What did that mean? Everyone looked over when they heard that, and were all extremely shocked. They didn't understand what Ling Han was trying to do. Have you given up on yourself? Humph. Lu Xianming and the others were all cold. This brat was indeed incapable. It had only been a mere 3 years, so what heights could he possibly reach? What he had concocted was definitely a 1-star alchemical pill, so he had destroyed it himself to avoid making a fool of himself. Then why did he still come over? What a joke. He had caused such a huge commotion previously, and if he cowered now, how would he have the face to see others in the future? Thus, he pretended to concoct alchemical pills. In any case, they were separated by a room, so everyone could only see if he had successfully concocted the alchemical pill, but they didn't know exactly what alchemical pill he had concocted. Thus, he could completely pass himself off as genuine. There was no need to treat him as an opponent at all. Aside from Ling Han, there were 6 other people who didn't come out immediately. Instead, after completing the spirit refinement, they began to concoct a second alchemical pill, hoping that they could concoct an even better alchemical pill and perform a more outstanding spirit refinement to improve their results. Another month passed, and another 3 holy sons pushed open the door and came out. Now, only 4 people were still continuing to concoct alchemical pills. Unexpectedly, Ling Han concocted a second cauldron of celestial pills, and then crushed it himself. True enough, this guy was definitely concocting a one-star alchemical pill, so he didn't dare to show the alchemical pill he had concocted to others at all. Not only did Lu Xianming and the others think this way, but the other alchemists also thought the same. Only alchemist Zicheng showed an expression of admiration. He naturally knew of Ling Han's alchemy prowess. The alchemical pills he had concocted in the previous 2 attempts were definitely 2-star, and the quality was better each time. So why did he crush it? This was Ling Han pressuring him, forcing him to break through in an extremely short time. For the 3rd cauldron, not only did he have to succeed, but the quality of the pills he had concocted had to improve further. Ruthless, really ruthless. Alchemist Zicheng really admired this disciple too much. Even if others had to concoct 3 cauldrons, they definitely wouldn't discard the pills from the first 2 cauldrons. Instead, they would choose the best of the 3 cauldrons. What about Ling Han? He had forced himself into a dead end, but at the same time, this also showed how confident Ling Han was. In this 3rd cauldron, he would definitely concoct better pills. Only those who possessed such confidence and great determination were worthy of being his disciple, and only those who had the right to walk towards the peak of alchemy. Alchemist Zicheng stroked his beard with a slight smile. Even if Ling Han really failed, he would still think of a way to smooth things over. So what? I'm just that shameless. If you have the ability, come and bite me. Meanwhile, Lu Xianming and the others were even more disdainful. It was only a mere 3 years, so there was indeed no need to treat Ling Han as a rival. They really thought too highly of him. Ling Han's mind was completely focused on concocting pills. Right now, his spirit was in an incredibly subtle state, almost ethereal. This filled him with confidence, and the alchemical pills he concocted would be better with each cauldron. When he concocted the 3rd cauldron, he felt an urge to destroy it and refine it again. However, after a shudder, he suddenly remembered that this was an examination, so he couldn't be reckless. He hurriedly stopped and began to perform spirit refinement. There were a total of 3 pills in this cauldron. After performing spirit refinement for the first time, Ling Han shook his head and directly tossed the alchemical pill away. Then he picked up the 2nd pill and continued to perform spirit refinement, but in the end he tossed it away again. Only the last pill was left. Chapter 1909. Ling Han was the type of person who would be more motivated the more pressure he was under. There was only one last alchemical pill left. Instead, he broke into a smile, a calm expression on his face. His hands flipped and he began to work. Outside, aside from Ling Han, the other 9 people had already completed their pill concoction and spirit refinement, and there was only a bit of time left until the deadline of 1 day. However, in the alchemy room, because there was the effect of time acceleration, there was enough time for Ling Han to complete 2 more spirit refinements. Everyone's gazes focused on him. Playing to the gallery. Lu Xianming's expression was filled with disdain. Ling Han's previous 2 spirit refinements had only been first refinement before throwing away the alchemical pill. What did this mean? It had to be that he could only first refinement, so he deliberately threw it away to hide his lack of ability. Yes, this guy had only used 4 or 5 years to reach first refinement. This was very awesome, but the problem was, the starting point of the test was 2-star alchemical pills and 2nd refinement. Then, no matter how perfect his first refinement was, no matter how little time he spent on alchemy, so what? This was also the reason why Lu Jin had set a 3-year deadline with alchemist Zicheng. Because in such a short time, no matter how freakish a genius was, it was impossible to reach 2nd refinement. Even alchemist Zicheng was slightly nervous. Ling Han really did not have the slightest path of retreat. If he did not succeed, he would die trying. He was flustered from worry, and he would be more confident in concocting the alchemical pill himself, but now he was so nervous that his palms were sweating. This little disciple really knew how to play with people's hearts. First refinement completed. Ling Han broke into a smile. In the past half a year, he had been constantly improving his level of first refinement, gradually reaching a perfect level. Furthermore, it was built on his own techniques. This was astonishing, and it represented that he could possibly create a system of spirit refinement that belonged to him in the future. At first, there were still some small flaws, but after a few imperfect spirit refinements, and under immense pressure, he completed the refinement. First refinement, perfect. Let's begin second refinement. He waved his hands, and the celestial pill immediately danced. Bursts of fiery light flew out from his palms, turning into multiple lines that wrapped around the celestial pill like a spider web. Ling Han was so focused that he had forgotten that this was a test, and was purely refining an alchemical pill. Ethereal, carefree, and close to the great Tao. When they saw this scene, many alchemists were astonished and moved. This kind of state was very rare. It allowed the quality of the alchemical pills concocted to be a notch higher than usual. It was as if heaven and earth were helping them. Then, the great Tao would naturally be easily extracted and resonated with the medicinal effects. Heavens, under the heavy pressure of the assessment, this kid can actually enter the ethereal state? Damn, he really didn't know whether to say that this kid had no desire for fame or wealth, or that he was born to be an alchemist. The expressions of Lu Xianming and the others changed. Ling Han could actually reach the second refinement. The second refinement was not something to be trifled with. How could that be? It had only been 3 years, and he might not even have reached the first refinement. How could he have reached the second refinement? But the facts spoke louder than words, and they were completely speechless. He could only hope that the quality of the medicinal pills that Ling Han refined was not high, and the standard of the second refinement was not that great either. I believe that just based on the fact that Holy Sun Ling could enter an ethereal state at such a time, he is qualified to become the chairperson of Alchemy City, someone suddenly said. That's right. This is really too rare. Quite a few people agreed. That's not right. There was naturally someone who objected. An assessment is an assessment. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. That's right. Could it be that if he can't become the chairperson, he can't shine in Alchemy City? This also received the support of a considerable number of people. The people on both sides began to argue. Though no one was convinced in a short while, this caused Lu Xianming and the others to pale in fright. There had never been something like this. The assessment had not even ended, and almost half of the people already had someone to support. It should be known that there was still alchemist Zicheng behind Ling Han. As long as he said a word at this time and supported Ling Han, that would definitely be the final word. Thankfully, alchemist Zicheng's expression was calm all along, and he did not speak. He was filled with confidence in Ling Han, and would not stoop to using this kind of little trick at all. Of course, if Ling Han really failed in his spirit refinement, he would not mind using his own influence to change the opinions of some people. Could it be that the abilities of the disciple that he had taught still need to be doubted? In the alchemy chamber, a day quietly passed. Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed. Boom, the 9 heavens flames surged, wrapping around the celestial pill. The flames were fierce, wanting to burn the celestial pill into ashes. Just at this moment, Ling Han suddenly moved again, and the Xianyin source water was channeled. Water and fire countered each other, and the might of the 9 heavens flame was instantly suppressed. Ice and fire collided, and extreme cold and extreme fire intersected, creating a miraculous change. This was Ling Han's understanding of alchemy and medicinal theory. Boom, ice and fire surged, and then everything returned to normal. Ling Han frowned, feeling an urge to destroy this alchemical pill. It was actually a little short of perfection. He had initially thought that 2 spirit refinements would be perfect, which made him feel that it was a pity, and he wanted nothing more than to start another cauldron of spirit refinement. I failed, Lu Xianming and the others thought. No, if I failed I would definitely lose the alchemical pill. This is spirit refinement, so the quality of the spirit refinement is definitely not good enough. That's why he has such a bitter expression. The other 9 holy sons and holy daughters calmed down slightly. The failure this time would definitely be a heavy blow to Ling Han's popularity. As Ling Han also pushed open the door and walked out, alchemist Zicheng spoke up and said, "Since everyone is ready, then let us begin to appraise the quality of the alchemical pill." He paused and casually called out names. Luo Ying, Zigong, Gong Tian, the 10 of you are responsible for appraising. 10 alchemists walked out, and they were all 3-star alchemists. After they were assigned, they each stood in front of a holy son and holy daughter, and then began to appraise the alchemical pill together. Alchemy took a very long time, but the appraisal only needed a short while. Furthermore, these 10 were all 3-star alchemists, but the selection of the future chairperson of Alchemy City was a very important matter. Thus, they repeatedly appraised the alchemical pill several times before coming to a conclusion. Report the results according to the order in which they came out, Grandmaster Zicheng said calmly. Holy Son Oken has concocted the Azure Peak Spirit Transformation Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty of concocting is medium, and the grade of the completed pill is high grade. The first spirit refinement is perfect, and the second spirit refinement is ordinary, a 3-star alchemist immediately reported. Grandmaster Zicheng nodded and said, "Let's use this result as the basis, and set it as 10 points, and proceed with addition and subtraction." All the alchemists nodded. Since they were going to make a comparison, there definitely had to be a reference. Holy Son Lu Xianming has concocted the Jade Bone Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty of concocting is low, and the grade of the completed pill is medium grade. The first spirit refinement is perfect, and the second spirit refinement is perfect, a second alchemist reported. Grandmaster Zicheng pondered slightly and said, "The difficulty of concocting and the grade of the completed pill are both a little inferior, but the 2 spirit refinements are both perfect. Furthermore, Lu Xianming has only stepped onto the path of alchemy for 200 million years, so he can add points. In the end, he will get 11 points. Is there anyone who objects?" Okan's expression instantly paled. He had not thought that he would be defeated so quickly. Good. All the alchemists nodded. Alchemist Zicheng did not deliberately suppress Lu Xianming just because he was Lu Jin's disciple. He was really of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Yet Ling Han snickered internally. How was this master of his noble character and unquestionable integrity? Rather, it was because he was certain that he would win, so he had deliberately done this. It would be a waste not to gain some popularity. Sly old fox, oh no, cunning and circumspect. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1910. A good story. Holy Daughter Qingguyu has concocted an earth-replenishing pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is high, and the grade of the completed pill is superb grade. The first spirit refinement is ordinary, and the second spirit refinement is ordinary, the third alchemist reported. When his words fell, everyone was in an uproar. A 2-star alchemist was actually able to reach the grade of superb grade when concocting an alchemical pill of high difficulty level. This was too exaggerated. Astounding, too astounding. Even Grandmaster Zicheng showed an expression of admiration and said to Qingguyu, "You advanced into the dividing soul tier 300,000 years ago. Could it be that your first dividing soul was formed from the 5 elements of heaven and earth?" As expected of a Grandmaster of Alchemy, he immediately guessed the reason, but as for the specific element, even he could not possibly determine it. "Yes." Qingguyu immediately replied respectfully. "My young soul is the essence of water and wood." The essence of water and wood. Everyone showed an expression of envy. This kind of yang soul was completely useless in battle and cultivation, but in alchemy, it was like a gift from the heavens. Only the fire and wood dividing souls and the earth and wood dividing souls could compare. This would definitely give her a great boost in points. Grandmaster Zicheng pondered slightly, and then said, "Overall score, 11. Qingguyu was slightly disappointed, but now that she was tied for first place with Lu Xianming, and had also surpassed Oken, she no longer had any other opponents. In future, it would be a competition between her and Lu Xianming. And she was a dividing soul of water and wood, and as her cultivation level increased, the wonders of alchemy would be revealed step by step, becoming even more dazzling and dazzling. Lu Xianming was definitely no match for her. Oken was even more disappointed. He knew that the position of chairperson was already incredibly far away from him. All of a sudden, he lost all hope, and sat down on the ground, not knowing what expression he should have. The 4th, 5th, 6th, the 10 alchemists all reported the grade of the alchemical pill they had appraised, and Grandmaster Zicheng scored them one by one. He was impartial, and everyone was convinced. Finally, it was Ling Han's turn. Holy Sun Ling Han has concocted a heavenly flame pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is high, and the grade of the completed pill is high grade. First spirit refinement is perfect, second spirit refinement is perfect, the 10th alchemist reported. What? Everyone was in an uproar. Even though the medicinal pill Ling Han refined was slightly inferior to Qingguyu's, it had still attained the high grade. Coupled with his age in the Tao of alchemy, he was absolutely able to make up for the gap between the two of them and even surpass Qingguyu. And yet, both of his spirit enhancements were perfect. Hiss. That's not right. Weren't you frowning just now? Didn't you mess it up? A smile involuntarily spread across Grandmaster Zicheng's face. When he saw the doubtful expressions on the faces of many people, he said, "The 10 of you can all be appraised." The other 9 3-star alchemists hurriedly gathered around. If they did not personally witness it, they would really not be able to believe it. But not long after, all of them revealed looks of astonishment, as well as a kind of reverence towards a genius, even if Ling Han's current level of alchemy was still inferior to theirs. The first spirit enhancement was perfect, but the second spirit enhancement was slightly flawed, but it can still be considered perfect. The 10 alchemists discussed for a while, and gave their final conclusion. As for the quality of the completed pill, there was no mention of it, so it was naturally confirmed. I don't believe it. Lu Xianming cried out involuntarily. Without needing Grandmaster Zicheng to appraise, everyone knew that Ling Han had won, and had surpassed the various holy sons by more than just a little bit. Humph, how can the conclusion of the 10 of us be questioned by you? A 3-star alchemist said rudely. How many 4-star alchemists were there? Though Lu Xianming was a holy son, his future achievements should only be that of a 3-star alchemist, and added with the fact that he was only a 2-star alchemist now, what right did he have to doubt the unified conclusion of 10 3-star alchemists? If you're not convinced, then fuck off. There's no need for you to be convinced. Grandmaster Zicheng nodded and said, I give Ling Han 15 points. Is there anyone who is not convinced? They all felt that it was definite that Ling Han had surpassed Lu Xianming and Qingguyu, but it was not to the extent of reaching the height of 15 points. 12 or 13 points should be about right. But in any case, it would not affect the result, so what need was there to dampen Grandmaster Zicheng's spirits? After all, he was their disciple, so it was understandable to give him a little boost. Unfortunately, they did not truly understand. Grandmaster Zicheng gave Ling Han 15 points not because he was deliberately raising Ling Han's score, but rather because he had taken into consideration Ling Han's unique spirit refinement technique into consideration. Just based on this, adding 2 or 3 points was definitely reasonable. No matter what, Ling Han had now won with an indisputable advantage. I declare that the future chairperson of Alchemy City will be Ling Han. Grandmaster Zicheng said, his voice rolling like thunder, resounding in every corner of the 5 levels of Alchemy City. After 300 million years, I will step down, and Ling Han will succeed me. In the palace, everyone bowed. The replacement of the old with the new was successfully completed, and Ling Han's potential also made everyone believe that this boy would definitely become a 4-star alchemist in future, and even surpass Grandmaster Zicheng. Even if he could not become a 5-star alchemist, perhaps he could reach 8th refinement in spirit refinement. Everyone left one after another, and Qingguyu and Lu Xianming both glared at Ling Han with eyes filled with resentment. If it were not for the sudden rise of Ling Han, they both had a chance of becoming the chairperson of Alchemy City. But one step was heaven and one step was hell. Congratulations, Holy Sun Ling. The other holy sons all came over to offer their congratulations. They knew that in future, they would have to live in the shadow of Ling Han. Unless they were willing to leave Alchemy City, they would have to lower their heads to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly at them and nodded. He was a very magnanimous person in the first place. Holy Sun Ling, can also walked over. Though his face was unbelievably pale, he still congratulated Ling Han, Speaking of which, this kind of result was actually a little easier for him to accept, because he had already suffered a deep blow from the very beginning. But there were many twists and turns, and neither Lu Xianming nor Qin Guyu had succeeded in ascending to the position, which made his heart feel much more balanced. Ling Han looked at him with a smile. Okan had been very arrogant at the time, and had wanted to recruit him, but had not succeeded, so he had threatened him, and had even developed malicious thoughts. All that happened yesterday shall be buried in yesterday. From now onwards, I am willing to follow Holy Sun Ling, and do my part for the strengthening of Alchemy City. Okan half knelt on the ground, and declared his loyalty to Ling Han. Was he really pledging his allegiance, or was he deliberately trying to get close to him with ulterior motives? Ling Han showed a confident smile. He had the magnanimity to tolerate everyone in the world, but if there was anyone by his side who still harbored disloyal thoughts, then don't blame him for being merciless and erasing them all. All right, then we shall work together. Ling Han helped Okan up, and Okan smiled. It was as if the grudge between the two of them had been resolved with a smile, but whether Okan was sincere or not, one might know a man's face but not his heart. That would have to be proven by time. Next, the city would naturally hold a distinguished meeting. This time, no outsiders would be invited. 300 million years later, when alchemist Zicheng stepped down from his position, and Ling Han ascended to the throne, he would definitely invite the whole world. That was a matter for the future. 5 days later, the excitement died down, and Ling Han made preparations to meet Yan Xianlu. Chapter 1912. There was not much time left until Yan Xianlu's appointment. Ling Han made good use of his time, and continued to improve his alchemy abilities. In martial art he had already reached the peak stage of the fourth severance, and could not possibly improve any further. Neither he nor the Empress had refined the heavenly Tao Jade. Rather, they were waiting for an opportunity, such as exchanging blows with a supreme prodigy of the present age, and personally feeling the aura of a fifth severance. Then, they would refine the heavenly Tao Jade, and perhaps they would be able to succeed in a single step. Ling Han was immersed in alchemy. Perhaps he would obtain a breakthrough in alchemy, and in passing he would open the door to martial art. Bewitching Maiden Ro was filled with anticipation. At first, she had only been in the circle of holy sons and holy daughters of 3-star forces, and now, not only had she advanced into 5-star forces, but those that could receive an invitation from Yan Xianlu were definitely not qualified to be the heirs of ordinary Celestial King tier-level sections. They had to be top-notch Emperor tiers, stronger than even Zhao Qingfeng. Otherwise, they would only be worthy of being his subordinate, and how could they be qualified to be his honored guest? Yan Xianlu, what kind of prodigy is he? Ling Han and the Empress were both very curious. Ever since they entered into the Eternal Prosperity sect, there were people everywhere talking about Yan Xianlu's legend. He was just like the second Eternal Prosperity Celestial King. No one doubted whether Yan Xianlu could become a Celestial King, but rather wondered what heights he could reach in the future. 5, 7, even 9. At the foot of Three Yang Peak, people came one after another, but no one ascended the mountain. Because no one could ascend it. Ling Han had tried previously, but he could not ascend either. There was a supreme pressure, and even the 9 heavens flame and Shenyin source water could not resist it. Because this was not pure pressure, but also the will of a supreme elite's martial art. Taking a step back, even if it was pure pressure, this came from an 8th heaven Celestial King, and the source power of heaven and earth was only Celestial King tier level, but Celestial Kings were also divided into 9 heavens. Perhaps it could only be comparable to the 1st heaven, or possibly the 9th heaven, and the possibility of being able to oppose an 8th heaven Celestial King was very small. How was he to ascend it? Even 2 source powers of heaven and earth could do nothing, and even if Yan Xianlu was a 5th severance, Ling Han did not believe that he could set foot on it. Perhaps, it was just like some kind of secret realm, where one could not enter at any time. One had to wait for the opening time. The day the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King attained Tao. It should be this day, and that was why Yan Xianlu had said that the 3 stars would converge. More and more people arrived, and they were all waiting at the side. Some people did indeed try to ascend the peak, but they were quickly defeated with flushed faces. Before the pressure of an immortal king, even if one was a peerless genius, one could only stare at the peak and sigh powerlessly. The Empress and bewitching Maiden Row were exceptionally eye-catching. There was no need to say anything more about bewitching Maiden Row. She was naturally delicate and charming, and though she was not attracted to men, her seductiveness was off the charts. The Empress was still very low-key. She had covered her beautiful face with a white veil, hiding her exquisite features, but her perfect figure and unparalleled bearing could not be hidden no matter what. Her attractiveness was definitely not inferior to bewitching Maiden Row's. Since they had nothing to do, many people began to admire the two women. Some were more reserved, while others were more direct. They were so open and aboveboard, without any scruples. Well, that was everyone's right, but to stare fixedly at them, was that appropriate? Ling Han strode over and arrived in front of a person. "Hey, you're blocking me." This was a tall young man with a head of dark blue hair. There were also 2 horns on his head, and they were similarly exuding a dark blue light. Ling Han frowned and said, "You keep staring at others like that. It is very rude." "Ha." The blue-haired young man threw his head back and laughed loudly. Then he looked at Ling Han and said, "Ugly, haven't you heard of the saying? A beauty is paired with a hero." "Oh, so you are a hero," Ling Han said calmly. "That's right. I, Zhu Xuega, am the strongest prodigy in the whole world." The blue-haired young man stretched out a finger and tapped his own chest. Hee, what a bold claim. Ling Han had yet to speak, but someone had already coldly followed up. Those that could be invited here, which one of them was not a supreme prodigy? It should be known that even Zhao Qingfeng was only Yan Xianlu's subordinate, and was not qualified to become a guest. This kind of emperor tier, or even monarch tier, how could they submit to anyone? "And who are you?" Zhu Xuega turned around and shouted at that person, his tone extremely unfriendly. "Lu Feizhang." This young man that had interfered said proudly. "Never heard of you." Zhu Xuega scoffed. "Then you know now, and you will remember it for the rest of your life, because I am the person who gave you a crushing defeat." Lu Feizhang moved brazenly, his right hand stretching out, turning into a massive golden beast claw that grabbed at Zhu Xuega. "Ha, you are seeking your own humiliation." Zhu Xuega was not the slightest bit afraid. His hands danced and a dark blue sea appeared. There was the sound of waves crashing against the shore, and it greeted Lu Feizhang's attack with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. The 2 young prodigies engaged in a great battle. They were both outstanding figures in the severing mundane tier. Even if neither of them had reached the 5th severance, in the vacuum between the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier, they had traveled a very long distance, and their battle prowess was incredibly shocking. Ling Han was astonished. Why had his business been snatched away? He rubbed his chin. Could it be that he really had a halo of bad luck? Otherwise, why had everything been fine just now, and he had only opened his mouth to say a few words, and someone had already made a move? Though he was eager and very much wanted to make a move, after all, he had been concocting alchemical pills for these 3 years, and had not had the chance to make a move. Firstly, he disdained to join forces with others, and secondly, he was too embarrassed to make a move on Lu Feizhang, so he could only retreat in disappointment. "Yo, Lord Holy Sun wants to fly into a rage for the sake of a beauty?" Bewitching Maiden Row covered her mouth and giggled lightly, her beautiful figure trembling, incredibly enchanting. "Unfortunately, your business has been snatched away by someone else." "Do you believe that I will spank your bottom?" Ling Han threatened. "Do you have the heart to do that?" Bewitching Maiden Row looked aggrieved, delicate, and pitiful. Pretend Ling Han scoffed and said, "Bewitching Maiden, don't get carried away. I will eat you up, wipe my bottom, and leave. Who are you going to complain to?" Bewitching Maiden Row's heart clenched. If it was any other man, she was confident that she would be able to play them like a fiddle and toy with them in the palm of her hand. But Ling Han was really different from the rest. His heart was practically made of iron. If she really made him sleep with her, how could a mere holy daughter of a 3-star force seek justice from the future chairperson of a 4-star force? Seeing that he had subdued bewitching Maiden Ro, Ling Han relaxed internally. Even he had to admit that bewitching Maiden Ro had charm, but the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had allowed her to follow? Husband, not only can you stir up trouble yourself, you can also affect others, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said with a smile. At this moment, Lu Feizhang and Zhu Xuege were also fighting for real. The two great prodigies displayed all they could, and were like the sun at high noon. The Empress had been present all this while, her expression slightly grim. After a while, she said, "These two people are both very strong. If I do not use my trump card, I will only be able to fight them to a draw at most." Ling Han nodded. These two people were not just a little bit stronger than Zhao Qingfeng. The Empress did not overestimate them, nor did she belittle herself. She was speaking the truth. Furthermore, the Empress had a trump card, but did these two not have one as well? You should be able to defeat them easily, the Empress continued, her tone incredibly certain. Chapter 1913. Ling Han broke into a smile. He had now reached the peak stage of the fourth severance, and only needed an opportunity to advance into the fifth severance. He had definitely cultivated the fourth severance to a flawless level. Added with the fact that he had too many trump cards, and merely 2 source powers of heaven and earth were enough to make even a celestial king blush with shame. In a battle of equals, it would be strange if he did not win. However, the Empress had not refined the heavenly Tao Jade yet. If she could still complete the leap of the Dragon's Gate, she would be pushing open a completely new door and raising her battle prowess to the true pinnacle. Like Yan Xianlu? Fifth severance, were there any fifth severance elites here? Ling Han's eyes swept over them. Though each and every prodigy was brimming with arrogance and possessed astonishing confidence, all of their auras were incredibly reserved, and it was completely impossible to detect them. I am Dongmen Hong, and my hands are itching. Who would like to battle with me? A tall and sturdy man jumped out. He was incredibly bold, and had already drawn out a purple machete that was as long as 3 meters, and began to issue a challenge to the others. I'll go. A yellow-robed young man jumped out, and did not say any more superfluous words, immediately beginning a fierce battle with Dongmen Hong. Prodigies like them were all fanatics in martial art. Seeing that there were already 2 pairs that had begun a fierce battle, and were indeed of extremely high level, not the slightest bit inferior to themselves, they couldn't help but feel their fighting spirit stirring. More and more people entered the battlefield, and a fierce battle unfolded. Then, it became a chaotic battle. In the end, there was no longer any distinction between opponents, and they would attack anyone they saw. It was really a mess. Only a few people had not been swept into the battle, and stood slightly further away, crossing their arms over their chests. Brother Lao, when Yan Xianlu arrives later, he might die of anger when he sees the scene, right? A spectator said with a smile. His eyes swept over the chaotic battle, but his eyes were filled with disdain. Beside him was a purple-robed young man. His appearance was incredibly handsome, and his skin was also a little too fair. His skin was as soft and tender as a woman's. Not only that, his features were too delicate, and his brows were thin and long, appearing very feminine. If it wasn't for his Adam's apple, one would have thought that he was a woman disguised as a man, and a failure at that. The purple-clothed youth laughed, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth that were as thin as shells. If you were to make a move, you would be able to subdue all of them in one move. As he spoke, one could hear that his voice was sharp and thin, as if he was a eunuch. Logically speaking, even if one was a eunuch, after cultivating to the celestial realm, any organ could be regenerated. There was no such thing as a cripple. That's Yan Xianlu's business. What does it have to do with me? The first person said. He was dressed in a white robe that was not tainted by a speck of dust, appearing extremely carefree. The purple-clothed youth laughed again. Then what did you say? I heard that you are very interested in Yan Xianlu. Isn't this creating a chance for you to get closer to Yan Xianlu? The young man in white asked with a smile. Swoosh! The purple-robed young man suddenly attacked. His right hand was so soft that it seemed to be boneless. It turned into a snake, and it was a golden snake. The snake opened its mouth wide, revealing two fangs as it bit towards the white-robed young man. A terrifying aura spread out. Hong, with a tremor, the chaotic battle instantly came to an abrupt end, and everyone came over. It was too frightening. It was as if they had encountered a source beast of heaven and earth that was currently showing its might towards them. "Ha, Lao Song, I just knew that you are the most vicious." The white-robed young man pressed down. Hong, a white screen of light appeared in front of him. Multiple symbols of great Tao bloomed, able to suppress the heavens and stabilize the universe. Hong, the golden snake, bit down, but could do nothing against this white screen of light. "Shan Jitong, are you seeking death?" Lao Song asked menacingly, his voice shockingly shrill. "That would still depend on whether you have that kind of strength." The white-robed young man, Shan Jitong, laughed loudly, not the slightest bit afraid. The two young elites faced off, a boundless aura spreading out. A large snake appeared behind Lao Song. It was completely golden, and there were multiple symbols of great Tao on its body, but not a single one was clear, as if it was in chaos. The large snake coiled its body, and was at least 30,000 meters tall. Its aura was astonishing, as if it could shatter the heavens with a light movement. Behind Shan Jitong, a phenomenon similarly appeared. That was a white sword that looked as if it was forged from jade. It looked like it would shatter with a single touch, yet it was completely capable of resisting that large snake's might. Fifth Severance. Ling Han and the Empress exchanged a look, and spat out two words at the same time. A fourth severance definitely could not be this strong. Only a fifth severance could reach this kind of height. Merely its aura could make severing mundane tears feel as if they were facing an abyss, their hearts trembling. True enough, aside from Yen Xianlu, there were other fifth severance elites in the prodigy gathering this time. "That's the source snake of heaven and earth," bewitching Maiden Rose said in a trembling voice, her pretty face panicked. There was an indescribable terror. Source snake. Ling Han had heard of source powers of heaven and earth, such as the Nine Heavens Flame and Xianyin Source Water. He also knew of the Chaos Source Rock, which was said to be the earliest rock formed when the heaven and earth were created. But what was a source snake? When the heaven and earth were created, there was originally nothing, but as the heaven and earth were perfected, the first batch of life appeared, and they were all called source ancestors. Small Tower suddenly spoke up. The first dragon in the world was called the ancestral dragon, source dragon, and the first phoenix in the world was called the ancestral phoenix, source phoenix. Then, the first snake born in the world was called the source snake. The ancestor of all snakes, source snake. What level is it? Ling Han asked. The source ancestors are definitely celestial kings, but different source seeds can reach different heights in the celestial king tier, Small Tower said. The strongest are naturally the ancestral dragon, ancestral phoenix, and the like. The ancestral snake is not weak either. It could be 7th heaven or 8th heaven. If there is no special opportunity, there should never be any hope of reaching 9th heaven. Ling Han nodded. This Lao Song had to be the descendant of the source snake, though it was unknown whether he was a snake that had taken human form, or he was originally human and had gone to cultivate the techniques of the source snake. Thinking about it, the possibility of the latter was not high. It should be a descendant of the source snake that could reach such heights. Ling Han's battle blood was boiling. There was more than 1/5 severance here, and perhaps just the battle of these people would be enough for him to complete his breakthrough. He and the Empress both had to be careful. This was the first time they had truly become a 5th severance elite, and merely sensing that kind of aura could give them a sliver of a possibility of breaking through. Hee, Brother Lao, Brother Shan, what is going on? Even if I have not treated you well, there is no need for the two of you to fight, right? There was a long laugh, and a young man in embroidered robes stepped through the air, his speed extremely fast. There were 3 other young people behind him, 2 men and 1 woman, all of whom had the bearing of dragons and phoenixes among men. Yen Xianlu. Lao Song and Shan Jitong both stopped their confrontation and walked towards this young man in embroidered robes, showing a strong expression of wariness. A 4th severance would never be able to imagine Yen Xianlu's strength. Only they, who were similarly 5th severance freaks, knew how strong this young man was. It was practically enough to make one despair. A divine fetus born on the celestial path was born close to Tao, and could learn any celestial technique with a single learning, and master it in a short while, even surpassing the person who had created this technique. This really could be a strange fetus born from heaven and earth, destined to be unparalleled. Ling Han couldn't help but be greatly interested, and walked towards Yan Xianlu. He had heard of this person countless times, so much so that calluses were about to form, but he had always been reluctant to meet him. Chapter 1914. Yan Xianlu's appearance was handsome, but not earth-shatteringly handsome like Lao Song's, but only average handsomeness. But when Yan Xianlu appeared, whether it was Lao Song or Shan Jitong, their elegance was overshadowed, as if they had become Yan Xianlu's foil, dim and lackluster. They were both fifth severance, but there was actually such a huge gap between them. The king of the celestial path was definitely not a boast. Yan Xianlu's expression was calm, but the three followers behind him felt a sliver of anger from their master. He had invited someone over to keep the appointment, but the host had not even arrived, and the guests were actually fighting. Did they think that just because he had not witnessed it with his own eyes, he could not tell that a great battle royale had once taken place here? If news of this spread, it would really be a joke. Someone actually dared to make trouble at the banquet that he, Yan Xianlu, was holding. Just playing around to pass the time, Shan Jitong said smilingly, his figure standing as straight as a sword. He naturally could not show any weakness in front of Yan Xianlu. A fifth severance was a monarch tier, so how could a monarch tier possibly fear anyone? Meanwhile, Lao Song stared at Yan Xianlu with a feminine gaze. His eyes were glowing green, and there was an indescribable feeling in his gaze. Previously, Shan Jitong had mocked him for being interested in Yan Xianlu, and that was not just empty words. There really was such a possibility. Yan Xianlu only smiled slightly and did not ask further. He raised his head. That massive sun was already gradually dimming, and a bright moon was beginning to exude a clear glow. The sky was filled with dazzling starlight. "There is still some time until the 3 stars gather," he said calmly. "Since everyone is already impatient from waiting, then let's sit down." He was the first to sit down, and his actions seemed to have a strong influence. A considerable number of people did not even realize it themselves, and sat down as well. Then, their expressions suddenly changed. Each and every action of this person could actually affect others, and even peak emperor tiers like them. There were only a few exceptions, such as Shan Jitong, Lao Song, Ling Han, and the Empress. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was supported by Ling Han, and Bewitching Maiden Ro was supported by the Empress. This was a woman of the Ling family, so how could she be influenced by outsiders? There were 5 others who were still standing. They weren't emperors but had the potential to break through. Yan Xianlu's eyes roamed about, and when his gaze passed by Ling Han's group, he paused slightly, but immediately shifted his gaze over. Even the Empress and Bewitching Maiden Ro did not attract his attention. This person's willpower was terrifyingly strong. Ling Han smiled at the Empress. The two of them took out a stone chair from their spatial god tools, and then sat down. They would sit, but it was definitely not because of Yan Xianlu's orders. Yan Xianlu showed a meaningful smile. His eyes swept over them, and he remembered the few that could stand firm in his heart. This was the group that he wanted to recruit. The rest were mediocre, and he couldn't even be bothered to recruit them as subordinates. "Thank you for coming from afar," he said. "I've invited all of you here for 2 reasons. One is to discuss martial art together." Shan Jitong immediately showed a disdainful smile. "Yan Xianlu, discussing martial art with these people, have you been kicked in the head by a donkey? Are these people worthy?" He was a monarch tier. What king tier or emperor tier was qualified to be his equal? "What did you say?" A considerable number stood up, their expressions filled with fury. "Isn't that so? A bunch of trash." Shan Jitong scoffed. "Even if all of you join forces, I would only need a single finger to suppress you all. What right do you all have to discuss martial art with me? Isn't this a joke? Come and try." A green-robed youth jumped out. There were 3 silver horizontal lines on his forehead. Shan Jitong glanced at him and disdainfully said, "Silver-toed race, I remember that a so-called prodigy appeared in your race, called Ha Ming or something. He was suppressed by me in 3 moves, unable to withstand a single blow." The green-robed youth's expression suddenly changed. He pointed at Shan Jitong and involuntarily exclaimed, You are the 7 Swords Demon King. And now, you still want to exchange blows with me? Shan Jitong asked calmly. The green-robed youth's face alternated between red and green, yet he turned around and left, directly fleeing. The Ha Ming that Shan Jitong spoke of was a senior that was several generations older than him. When he had been in the severing mundane tier, he had also been invincible, and was viewed by the race as the person most likely to become a celestial king. But once, when Ha Ming had gone out to train, he had been horribly defeated by a severing mundane tier. From then on, his Tao heart had been completely lost, and he had become immortal. This person who had defeated him was called the 7 Swords Demon King, because all his opponents would definitely be defeated within 7 strikes. The green-robe youth did not know that this 7 Swords Demon King was Shan Jitong. Otherwise, he definitely would not dare to provoke the latter. Previously, when Ha Ming had been defeated, Shan Jitong had still been a 4th severance. The 2 of them had been at the same cultivation level, and there was no suppression of cultivation level, and the green-robed youth knew his own limitations. Whether it was his natural talent in martial art or strength, he was much weaker than Ha Ming, who was at the same cultivation level. He did not want to end up the same as Ha Ming. Everyone was stunned. The green-robed youth was a prodigy that had recently risen up in the silver-toed race. His cultivation level was at the peak stage of the 4th severance, and his battle prowess was astonishing, but he had actually been scared off by a single sentence from Shan Jitong. This was really unimaginable. Hiss, the 7 Swords Demon King. Only after their shock had passed did they realize that Shan Jitong was that mysterious 7 Swords Demon King. In the past, there had once been a young elite swordsman who went around challenging others. Who knew how many severing mundane tier prodigies had been defeated within 7 strikes from him. Some had even had their Tao hearts crumble. But 30,000 years ago, the 7 Swords Demon King had suddenly vanished without a trace. Now that they thought about it, Shan Jitong should have been at the peak stage of the 4th severance at that time. He had gone around challenging others in order to break through to the 5th severance. Obviously, Shan Jitong had succeeded, and so he had disappeared 30,000 years ago. That was because there was no need for him to go around challenging others anymore. Yan Xianlu, what exactly have you invited us here for? Shan Jitong asked impatiently. Though Celestials had an unlimited lifespan, he was not willing to spend it on meaningless things either. Yan Xianlu smiled calmly, yet began to talk about something completely unrelated. This 3-yang peak is the place where my master achieved Tao. When he succeeded, the 3 stars gathered, and the phenomenon was astonishing. This time, it is the anniversary of my master achieving Tao for an entire epoch. My master deduced that there will be another phenomenon in heaven and earth, and those who ascend to the peak will be able to obtain the fortune of heaven and earth. He glanced at Shan Jitong and Lao Song. As expected, the 2 of them looked tempted. He continued, I have not broken through to the dividing soul tier all this while, and it is precisely because I have been waiting for this day. Since there is such a good thing, why would you let us benefit from it? Lao Song asked. Today, when the 3 stars gather, the might of the celestial king tier here will be at its lowest, but even so, not everyone is qualified to ascend the mountain, Yan Xianlu said calmly. I have never minded competing with others. Furthermore, I still have an important matter. What is it? Shan Jitong asked. Among those present, only he and Lao Song were qualified to speak with Yan Xianlu on equal terms. There is no rush, Yan Xianlu said calmly. If we cannot reach the peak, there is no meaning in listening. Chapter 1916. Shangde was the holy son of the White Sun sect. Though he was not as outstanding as Yan Xianlu, being able to become the holy son of a 6th heaven celestial king tier sect, there was naturally no need to doubt his talent in martial art. If one had to say that he had any shortcoming, it would only be that he was a little dissolute, but which man wasn't dissolute? He moved in a violent rage. Boom, a ball of fiery flames burst out from his body, turning into multiple immortal beasts, each one formed from patterns of great Tao. In comparison, Zhao Qingfeng was practically trash. Ling Han's figure moved, focusing mainly on dodging as he shouted loudly, "A great holy sun, not only taking advantage of others, you still want to silence them." This shout immediately drew a great many people over. Some even wore expressions of intense disdain. They did not know the cause and effect, and only knew that Shangde had indeed grabbed onto Ling Han's feet. What a strange fetish. Shangde immediately flushed red. He knew that rumors would stop with the wise. Anyone with a bit of a normal brain would know that he, Shangde, liked women, so how could he possibly deliberately touch a man's feet? But now, with so many strange gazes fixed on him, he could not calm down no matter what. "You brat, I'm going to kill you," he roared. He had been easily angered by Ling Han. Was this really the holy son of the White Sun sect? Everyone looked at the Shangde who was roaring furiously, their eyes filled with doubt. A holy son, not a holy son from an ordinary celestial king tier force, but a sixth heaven celestial king tier super force. How could he be so easily angered? Heavens, how could such a person possibly become a holy son? How could they know that with Ling Han's mouth, putting aside a mere holy son, even celestial kings could be angered to the point of bursting into rage? However, everyone very quickly showed expressions of shock. This time, it was not because of Shangde, but rather because of Ling Han. This young man was so strong. Though he had only been dodging all this while, it should be known that if he was only dodging and did not retaliate at all, and still had the strength to ensure that he would not be injured, the difficulty was far greater than parrying. Which also meant that Ling Han's true strength was definitely not inferior to Shangde's, and might even surpass it. Heavens! How is that possible? They very quickly recognized that Ling Han was the holy son that had been chosen by Alchemy City this time around, but what kind of place was Alchemy City? Putting aside the fact that it was only a 4-star force, even if it was a first heaven celestial king tier sect, how could it compare to the White Sun sect? Moreover, wasn't the holy son of Alchemy City supposed to concoct pills? They had only thought that what Yan Xianlu valued was Ling Han's natural talent in alchemy. This was not strange. After all, Yan Xianlu had not advanced into the celestial king tier, and there was nothing he could use Ling Han for. But only now did they know that Ling Han's ability in martial art was also astonishingly strong, enough to be on par with them, or perhaps even stronger. This was unacceptable to them. A group of geniuses born to excel in martial art actually lost to an alchemist. Damn, at this moment, they were unprecedentedly united, and all of them hoped that Shangde could defeat Ling Han. Otherwise, they, too, would feel humiliated. But no matter how Shangde channeled his celestial techniques, he could not do anything to Ling Han. What made him even more depressed was that though he and Ling Han had already exchanged close to 100 moves, in truth, the two of them had not come into actual physical contact even once. Aside from the very beginning, when he had accidentally grabbed onto Ling Han's foot. "Do you only know how to run?" Shangde tried to goad him into action. "Cowardly as a mouse, I really don't know what you're cultivating for." "In any case, it's not to touch a man's foot," Ling Han said smilingly. When Shangde heard this, his fury immediately flared up again. "You still dare to say it, you still dare to say it, I'm going to kill you." In his hands, multiple celestial techniques were channeled, materializing the circulation of great Tao. As expected of the heir that had been nurtured by a sixth heaven celestial king tier sect. If Zhao Qingfeng were to exchange blows with him, he should show signs of defeat within 100 moves, and in a battle to the death, he would definitely die within 1,000 moves. In layman terms, his battle prowess was about the same as the Empress's. Unfortunately, his opponent was Ling Han. Even if Yan Xianlu's cultivation level was suppressed to the 4th severance, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious in a battle with Ling Han. Yan Xianlu had been born on the celestial path, and this was indeed impressive, but Ling Han was not simple either. He had 2 source powers of heaven and earth, and furthermore had the indestructible Heaven Scroll, a wondrous technique that was at least at the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier level. Finally, he had been tempered by the Celestial King tier flame, making up for the last shortcoming of his physique. He was completely not inferior to the best holy sons. Shangde was already not enough. Ling Han sighed. At first, he had wanted to use Shangde to temper himself, but the height he presently stood at was a little frightening. Even an heir that had been nurtured by a 6th Heaven Celestial King tier sect could not give him the slightest bit of pressure. "Little Dada, you're a little weak," he said truthfully. If the other's strength was close to his, then if the two of them battled to their fullest, perhaps he could push open the door to the 5th severance. Shangde was stamping with fury. This guy actually dared mock him. He really did not know how the word death was written. "You asked for this." His right hand shook, and a 3-meter-long silver spear appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a stern aura spread out, very frightening. Ling Han was slightly moved. He could feel that this spear had the ability to wound him. The treasured spear might be at dividing soul tier, but even if it could not unleash its full might in the hands of a 4th severance, it was still incredibly sharp and could even pose a threat to his physique. Slightly interesting. Ling Han's interest was piqued, his eyes shining. "It's not just slightly interesting, I'm going to send you on your way." Shangde had no qualms at all. So what if he was a holy son of Alchemy City? If he killed him, so be it. He did not believe that Alchemy City would still dare charge into the White Sun sect to demand an explanation. That would really be asking for their own humiliation. Shwa, the silver spear moved, and like a silver dragon, it shook the skies. Multiple patterns of great Tao flickered on the spear's body, forcibly tearing the space apart. This was definitely not a pseudo-celestial tool of Yang Soul or Yin Soul tier, but rather something even higher. It was fine if Shangde could not unleash the full might of a pseudo-celestial tool, but the level of this spear itself was too high. If he was touched by the patterns on it, even with Ling Han's physique, he would probably have a hard time. It was a very natural thing for his skin to be torn open. Though Ling Han was not afraid of the other's strength, he did not dare underestimate this pseudo-celestial tool. Immediately, he drew out the divine demon sword and slashed out at the silver spear. The two treasured tools clashed, and a deafening boom that was enough to shake the galaxy erupted. The shattered rocks in the surroundings all floated up about 3 meters into the air and then quickly shot up into the sky, gathering to form a dark tornado. Shangda's whole person was also sent flying. The silver spear in his hand was extremely frightening, but his own strength was a great deal inferior to Ling Han's. In a head-on clash, he naturally could not be a match for it. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. Though they had guessed that Ling Han's strength could possibly be stronger, they were finally willing to believe it when they saw it with their own eyes. Fuck, how could you possibly be an alchemist? Chapter 1917. Ling Han gazed at Shangde, who had been sent flying, yet he put the divine demon sword away. There was no time to waste with Shangde now. He had to ascend to the summit as quickly as possible. Only the first person to reach the summit would be able to obtain the great fortune of heaven and earth. "Let's go." The Empress nodded, and bewitching Maiden Ro looked very pitiful, looking at Ling Han with a pleading gaze. Ling Han sighed internally. He clearly knew that it was not good to have too much contact with bewitching Maiden Ro, but the bewitching arts that this bewitching maiden cultivated were really not for show. She was subtly influencing him, causing him to accept this person more and more. It wasn't out of lust, but because he saw the other party as a friend. Furthermore, if they left bewitching Maiden Ro here, she would easily be eaten by others. How could a mere 3-star force scare the successors of these celestial king tier level sects? If news of this spread, it was guaranteed that there would be many people who would come back and say that bewitching Maiden Ro was actually trying to climb up the social ladder. Wasn't it easy for him to get beautiful women? He stretched out a hand and pressed down, drawing bewitching Maiden Ro into his spatial god tool. Of course, it could not be the Black Tower. He was still far from trusting this bewitching maiden. Ling Han and the Empress walked side by side. The others stared at his back for a while before following suit. Some people didn't make a move because they didn't have enough confidence. If they made a move, they would only be asking for humiliation. Some people were in a hurry. After all, Ling Han was very strong. It would take a long time to defeat him. It might even take a year and a half. By then it would be too late. The higher they went, the more terrifying the aura reverberating through the mountains became. It wasn't to the extent that it was difficult to walk, but taking a single step was incomparably difficult. Their foreheads were drenched in sweat. Ling Han and the Empress's speed was too slow, and was far from being able to compare with Yan Xianlu and the others. Going by this way, they might not even be able to drink any soup, what more meat. But what can we do? They were not fifth severance, and were forcibly one cultivation level lower than Yan Xianlu and the others. Furthermore, it was an incredibly crucial cultivation level. Severing mundane tier, yet possessed the battle prowess of a dividing soul tier. This was far too astonishing. At this rate, there's no way we'll be able to catch up to the other three, Ling Han said to Queen. The Empress nodded. Unless we can break through to the fifth severance. The pressure here is strong enough. Maybe we can find an opportunity to break through. If that's the case, then this is actually the greatest opportunity for us. The two of them exchanged a glance and revealed a smile. That was right. In front of the fifth severance, was there still a greater opportunity? Ling Han was slightly more relaxed than the Empress, but for the sake of the Empress's future, he did not want to draw the Empress into the Black Tower. Instead, he used his full strength to resist the terrifying aura in the mountains and climbed up step by step. This was the Broken Clouds Mountain. It was so tall that it could block the clouds. Although the Three Suns Peak was not the tallest mountain, its height was still enough to make people shrink back. 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, a month. They actually walked on the mountain path for a whole month. Even though they didn't walk fast, after so many days, the bottom of the mountain had long disappeared. Only white clouds were left, and if they went up, they still wouldn't be able to reach the top. This mountain is way too high. Ling Han and the Empress did not know whether Yan Xianlu and the others had reached the summit or not. However, under the tempering of this aura, it was as if they were battling with a frightening opponent at all times. The barrier inside their bodies was becoming clearer and clearer. Fifth severance. They had already reached the hope of breaking through to the fifth severance. It was close at hand, as if they could touch it if they reached out. But if they really stretched out their hands to touch it, it was as if it was so far away that they could never touch it. This kind of feeling drove them crazy. Is it because our tempering is not enough, or should we refine the heavenly Tao Jade? The Empress asked. Ling Han didn't know either. Putting aside the fact that they didn't have the experience of breaking through to the fifth severance, even the people he came into contact with didn't have it either. He couldn't ask others for their experience at all. Yan Xianlu, Lao Songshan, and Ji Tong, wasn't this a joke? Putting aside the fact that they had already run far away, even if they were, could it be easy for Ling Han to ask? Even if he did, would they pay any attention? In sects of sixth heaven celestial king tier and above, there would always be 1 or 2 people who broke through to the fifth severance every epoch. Then, Yan Xianlu and the others would have someone to guide them so that they wouldn't go down the wrong path. More importantly, neither Ling Han nor the Empress could be sure whether they could break through to the fifth severance in their present situation. Let's not refine the heavenly Tao Jade first, then. Ling Han thought for a moment, and thought that the fifth severance couldn't be broken through so easily. The Empress nodded. The two of them continued to walk. Not long after, they saw fog curl around them, forming some kind of shape. This was originally very normal. The position here was too high and there were clouds everywhere, but now this fog actually took the shape of a human, and it was becoming clearer and clearer. Not only were the features and silhouettes clear, it was even well developed. In a mere breath's time, this human shape had completely taken shape. If it weren't for the fact that Ling Han and the Empress saw this kind of transformation with their own eyes, they definitely wouldn't have thought that this person was actually formed from fog. This was a man, very young, with a full head of black hair draped over his shoulders, giving off a wild feeling. His arrogance soared, his eyes astonishingly bright. Upon closer inspection, there was actually a cross-shaped symbol in the depths of his pupils. Sword Demon Race? The Empress suddenly said. What sword demon race? Ling Han asked. In my bloodline memories, there is information about this race, the Empress explained. This is a frightening race. They don't have many people, but those that come out are all incredibly stunning, and a great many celestial kings have emerged from them. A great many celestial kings? This race is all elites of the sword. With a strike of their sword, any existence would be sliced into 4 pieces. This is a kind of supreme regulation. As the two of them spoke, this young man had already walked towards Ling Han and the Empress and said, Yi Wushang, you have been conferred as one of the 10 great prodigies of the Eastern Celestial Realm, ranked 8th. I, Gu Fei, have specially come to experience it. What was going on? Ling Han had the Empress, and the Empress had also Ling Han. Who was this Gu Fei speaking to? Yi Wushang and the others weren't called Yi Wushang. Yi Wushang, you are ranked 8th among the 10 great prodigies. Be careful that this becomes a curse, and you can only stay at the 8th heaven celestial king tier for the rest of your life. Gu Fei continued. Come, you call yourself eternal prosperity, and this has violated my taboo. Ling Han and the Empress both felt their hearts tremble, and then came to a realization. Yi Wushang was the eternal prosperity celestial king. This was the place where the eternal prosperity celestial king achieved Tao. An epoch ago, the eternal prosperity celestial king comprehended Tao here, and broke through to the celestial king tier. He replayed all the opponents he had encountered along the way, and relived his life of battle. Because the celestial king achieved Tao, it caused a mysterious reaction from the heaven and earth, and this kind of memory was also engraved. An epoch later, the heaven and earth had another unusual phenomenon, and there was Gu Fei's rebirth, replaying the scene of the challenge that year. Gu Fei was obviously a character of an epoch. Perhaps he had already died long ago, or perhaps he had become a celestial king and was immortal, but this Gu Fei now was the Gu Fei in Yi Wushang's memories. Come and fight, Gu Fei declared loudly. When he roared out these words, another cloud gathered, and once again turned into a human figure, but it wasn't Gu Fei, but rather another handsome man. Yi Wushang, I, Zhang Yun, challenge you. Chapter 1918. Ling Han turned to the Empress and smilingly said, 1 each. All right. The Empress nodded. Ling Han faced Gu Fei, while the Empress faced Zhang Yun. The two manifestations immediately launched their attacks. Boom, celestial techniques swept out, incredibly frightening. These two manifestations were not very strong, and were only ordinary Emperor tier. Ling Han and the Empress should be able to easily suppress them, but the environment here was special, and Ling Han and the Empress still had to endure a frightening pressure, while the two manifestations were formed from the heaven and earth here in the first place, so they were naturally not affected. In this way they were slightly strained. After battling for a very long time, they finally defeated these two, and the manifestations immediately turned back into clouds and mist, dissipating among the mountains. Those that could be remembered by the eternal prosperity celestial king do have some strength, Ling Han said. The Empress nodded. Furthermore, going by the usual pattern, the closer they were to the end, the stronger the opponents they would encounter. At the start, there were already 2 Emperor tiers, and added with the violent pressure of this place, how were they going to proceed from now on? Since this was the place where the eternal prosperity celestial king achieved Tao, then among the opponents he encountered on his way here, there would definitely be dividing soul tier, immortal palace tier, and ascending origin tier elites. Once one of such beings appeared, then Ling Han and the Empress would definitely have no choice but to retreat in defeat. Going by that logic, even the 5th severance could only look on and lament, so how could they possibly ascend to the top? That kind of thing definitely won't happen. Otherwise, the eternal prosperity celestial king would not have sent Yen Xianlu over, Ling Han immediately said. We'll naturally know when we go up. The Empress's confidence was not affected. However, the eternal prosperity celestial king seems to have really been cursed. After an epoch, he is still an 8th heaven celestial king. It should be just a coincidence. The two of them continued forward, but they had not gone far when the clouds and mist swirled, and another change occurred. Iwushang I, Sangdong, have come to challenge you. I, Dong Ziqi, have come to seek guidance. The clouds and mist transformed into two valiant men, exuding a light that soared into the skies. The battle immediately began. Ling Han and the Empress still chose an opponent each, and this time, they spent a longer time to defeat these two. They exchanged a look and nodded. Sure enough, the opponents were getting stronger and stronger. This made sense as well. If an opponent of the same level was defeated by the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King, how could he possibly be remembered? Therefore, the opponents here would be stronger than the last. This was very normal. There were definitely the most severing mundane tiers in this world. Thus, the chances of encountering outstanding elites among them would be very low. However, after advancing to the dividing soul tier, the entire social circle would suddenly become much smaller, and the situation would be different. Then, when it came to the Immortal Palace tier and Ascending Origin tier, the number of prodigies decreased drastically. Each prodigy was more outstanding than the last. The two of them set off, and not long after, two more opponents appeared in front of them. There was only one word left: fight. Ling Han and the Empress practically didn't stop to rest at all. They continued to battle just like that, and they both felt that some kind of change was happening to them. It was as if something inside their bodies had been upgraded. 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, time quietly passed, and the aura here did not change much. For example, it had suddenly become incredibly frightening, and the severing mundane tier did not even have the right to take a single step here. And such a long period of time had greatly exceeded the expectations of Ling Han and the Empress, and should have exceeded everyone's expectations as well. Half a year had passed, and they actually still hadn't climbed to the peak of a mountain. This was not because the Three-Yang Peak was too tall, but rather because it had not been peaceful along the way at all. There were continuous battles. The only benefit was that no matter what opponent appeared, they were only severing mundane tiers. This should have been deliberately arranged. Logically speaking, the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King could not possibly always battle with severing mundane tiers. And we are severing mundane tiers, so our opponents are also severing mundane tiers. Furthermore, they are within the range of the fourth severance, but each is stronger than the last. If this continues, it is really possible that a fifth severance opponent will appear. I'm rather looking forward to it. The two of them had already forgotten about the so-called fated opportunity at the summit. If they could break through to the fifth severance, this would be the most crucial threshold in their lives, signifying that they had advanced into the ranks of monarch tiers. Otherwise, they would be a great distance away from top-grade prodigies. Then come battle. Elsewhere, Peng Yanxianlu defeated his opponent with a single punch, and once again materialized into the form of clouds and mist. His expression was calm, filled with confidence. That was a kind of innate calmness and confidence. He was clearer about the situation here than others, and he firmly believed that he would definitely be the first person to reach the summit. He said he was not afraid of competition, and this was indeed one of the reasons. He was confident that he was invincible among his peers, but for the greatest fated opportunity in this epoch to appear on Three-Yang Peak, there had to be a great many top-grade prodigies competing together, and recreate the path of achieving Tao that the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King had. Defeating all the prodigies of the world, and stepping on the heads of prodigies to ascend to the summit. Only then would the heaven and earth resonate with them, and they would obtain a massive fated opportunity. It would not increase their cultivation level, but rather carry out a fundamental change. For example, he had a celestial Tao physique, and was naturally close to Tao. He could learn any celestial technique at first glance, but as long as it was not the true great Tao, then there would be room for improvement. He wanted to make use of this great fated opportunity to improve his physique closer to great Tao. Only in this way would he be qualified to battle with those few heaven-defying freaks. If someone knew Yan Xianlu's thoughts at this moment, they would definitely be greatly shocked. To be able to be called a heaven-defying freak by Yan Xianlu, what kind of earth-shattering figure was that? On the other side, though Lao Song and Shan Jitong had also swept through all obstacles along the way, they did not know the specific situation of this place, and did not know whether the other two monarch tiers had reached the summit before them, so they could not help but feel slightly anxious. The one they were most worried about was naturally Yen Xianlu. This person was called the King of the Celestial Path, and this was a supreme praise. Competing with this kind of person, one would naturally be slightly weaker. At the foot of the mountain. Haha. Amidst loud laughter, a young girl leaped down from a dragonhawk, placed her hands by her mouth, and called out loudly, "Ling Han, Niu is here." Young Imperial Empress, don't be so loud. There was another person behind her who hurriedly tried to stop her. This was naturally Hu Niu. She placed her hands on her hips and grumbled, "So annoying, so annoying. All day long, this won't do, that won't do. Then Niu won't be some damn Imperial Empress anymore. Come, I'll give it to you." She couldn't help but grimace. This young Imperial Empress was really worrisome. Why was there no one who could restrain her? Young Imperial Empress, Ling Han has been affected by the shockwaves of the Great Battle of Ascending Origin Tiers, and has been swept into the shockwaves. He definitely cannot escape, she advised. This Ling Han should only have the same name. We had better hurry back to the Rock Palace to avoid any complications. Oh no. Hu Niu shook her head like a rattle drum. If you want to go back, then go back yourself. Niu doesn't want it. Furthermore, you short-sighted guys have absolutely no idea how powerful Niu's Ling Han is. He won't die. Young Imperial Empress. An indescribable aura rippled out, and a series of ripples appeared in the air. There was actually a seven-colored brilliance in the skies, as if it was dancing in joy. Immediately, she showed a cautious expression and said to the skies, "Since the eternal prosperity king has come, why not show yourself?" Chapter 1920. Zhang Ye's mind had to be filled with 10,000 curses. Who had he offended? Peng, peng, peng. Those memory manifestations all stepped on his body as they chased over. Every step they took caused him to cry out repeatedly. Thankfully, the target of these manifestations was the young girl in front of him. Otherwise, if every one of them gave him a punch in passing, he would directly be done for. Ah! Zhang Ye trembled incessantly. Some manifestations really did not have the right place to step, and they purposely greeted his buttocks. Their kicks caused him unspeakable pain, and even Chrysanthemum Lord was greatly punished. So you are a human." The young girl in front turned around, her expression filled with shock. Then she became annoyed. "I already told you to get out of the way, and you are still standing here. If you delay Niu's time, can you afford to pay for it? Next time, don't let Niu touch you again, or I will blow your head off." Saying so, the young girl swaggered off. Of course, she also brought with her even more memory manifestations, forming a vast army. Zhang Ye, fuck you. Yang Hongyi was the holy son of a 6-star great sect. He had already advanced into the 4th Severance 1 million years ago, and had long since cultivated to the peak stage of the 4th Severance. In truth, he could already break through to the dividing soul tier, but he had never taken this step all along. That was because he had an even greater ambition, and that was to become a 5th Severance. However, this was too difficult to achieve. In so many years, he had not broken through the slightest bit at all, and had always remained where he was. He was also a person with great willpower, and had not wavered in his determination. In any case, the lifespan of Celestials was unlimited, and as long as the Immortals' tribulation had not reached an insurmountable level, there was completely no need for him to be in a hurry to break through. The difference between the 4th Severance and the 5th Severance was really too great. If he could not advance into this cultivation level, he could only be an Emperor tier, and had no fate with being a top-notch prodigy. It could be said that if you encountered any small flaws in your cultivation, such as not being able to solidify your cultivation level, this was not important. After reaching the Celestial King tier, there would be plenty of time for you to replenish them, but there was only this one chance to become a 5th Severance. He believed that this was a chance bestowed upon him by the heavens. He definitely had to become the first person to reach the top, and obtain a massive opportunity, taking the chance to push open the door to the fifth severance. Under this kind of pressure and motivation, he completed his self-improvement, and his battle prowess increased by an unbelievable amount. He defeated another memory manifestation. I've improved even further. With my present battle prowess, I should be invincible in the severing mundane tier. He said proudly to himself, the enemies here are all adjusted according to my realm, so I don't have the slightest disadvantage. Yen Xianlu Lao Song Shan Jitong, just you wait. In the future, I will definitely be one of the all-powerful people who can shake the celestial realm with just a raise of their feet. Bang bang bang, the ground suddenly trembled. At first, it was very light, but it soon became as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. What was going on? Although he had just said that he could shake the heavens and earth with just a lift of his foot, the problem was, firstly, he had not become such an important figure, and secondly, he had not lifted his foot. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! A feminine voice rang out as a beautiful figure charged over from below. So beautiful Yang Hongyi immediately revealed a look of amazement, but in the blink of an eye, this amazement turned into panic and even fear. My God, what's the matter with the crowd of figures following the maiden? That's the memory manifestation of a celestial king. Have you gone mad? You actually did not fight your way up step by step, but instead provoked so many in one go. Do you want to die? Hiss, even if you want to die, you can't drag others down with you. He had not even finished this thought when he saw that the maiden was already about to charge in front of him, scaring him so much that he hurriedly moved to the side. Peng, peng, peng. After the maiden charged over, a large crowd of manifestations also charged over. However, this place just so happened to be a narrow mountain path, and could only allow 3 people to walk side by side at most. Though he had let the maiden pass, the large crowd of manifestations did not care about anything else, and charged over together. Yang Hongyi was immediately in trouble. He was attacked by a few dozen manifestations, and was sent flying like marbles. Unfortunately, he could not retaliate. These manifestations were all too powerful. He could still match them one-on-one, but if it was 1 against 2 or 1 against 3, he would only be able to take a beating. If dozens of them attacked him together, he would definitely die. Thus, he definitely could not become the target of these manifestations. Otherwise, that would be seeking death. Long, the maiden led over 100 manifestations and crushed over, kicking up a cloud of dust on the ground. Only then did Yang Hongyi crawl up from the ground, and look at the place where the maiden had disappeared. His face was covered in bruises, all caused by the collisions of the manifestations. Furthermore, if he did not erase the strange martial art intent in his body, these injuries could not be healed at all. That was definitely not something that could be healed in a short period of time. He would maintain this pig-headed appearance for a very, very long time. I go. He raised his middle finger at the back of the maiden. If she returned in front of him, he would definitely come to blows with her. He couldn't swallow this insult. Ioyo. This raised finger immediately affected the injuries on his body, causing him to groan involuntarily. Pain, it was really fuck you painful. Huang Fu Ling, Wu Xian, Xiao Junren. One prodigy after another was surpassed by Hunyou, and they were all shocked and furious. As Hunyou ascended higher and higher, the army of manifestations behind her also became larger and larger. This number was no longer counted in the hundreds, but in the tens of thousands. It was too terrifying. Every manifestation was a prodigy of an era, and with so many of them added together, just how astonishing was the lineup. If Yen Xianlu saw this, he would probably pale with fright, right? Yet Hunyou was completely unconcerned, and excitedly called out Ling Han's name, driving a train all the way, pulling in enough hatred. The 10th month. Ling Han and the Empress had both fought until they were driven mad. Before this, though they had encountered a great many enemies, there were not many that could truly become their match. Yet here, every opponent was a super prodigy, a formidable foe that the eternal prosperity celestial king had encountered on his path to success. The success of a general was built on the bones of tens of thousands, and for a celestial king to ascend to the pinnacle, it was naturally unavoidable that he would need innumerable prodigies as his stepping stones. Now, these stepping stones had been reproduced by the Tao of heaven and earth, and every single one of them had frightening battle prowess. This practically listed all the formidable foes that the eternal prosperity celestial king had encountered in his lifetime. How many years of accumulation had that been? How many years had Ling Han and the Empress lived? Could they be compared? For them, advancing their cultivation level too quickly, and accumulation was a very great weakness, but now, they had really fought enough. Ling Han felt his blood boiling. His Tao heart was rising, and his will was ethereal. There was a great door that was about to open, but in terms of truly pushing it open, he was still that little bit off. The heavenly Tao Jade could assist in, "I'm about to break through," the Empress said. She, too, had the same feeling as Ling Han. Enter the Black Tower, and refine the heavenly Tao Jade. This kind of opportunity definitely cannot be missed. Otherwise, who knows when the next opportunity would come. Ling Han made a prompt decision, and entered into the Black Tower with the Empress. Only a while later, they saw Hunyo leading a great army as she bolted over. Ling Han, Ling Han. She charged forwards excitedly. Chapter 1921. Ling Han was startled. Hunyo? Why is she here? Ling Han immediately came to a realization. It had to be Commander Guan who had reported the situation at the time to Hunyo, saying that he was already dead, but how could Hunyo be willing to believe it? Thus, she personally came over. What is it? The Empress could not sense the situation outside the Black Tower. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, "Hunyo is here, and we will meet soon." A rare expression of seriousness appeared on the Empress' face. One of her doppelgangers had seen Hunyo before, so she knew how easily this little girl could get jealous. She also knew that Hunyo was similarly as beautiful as a celestial maiden, and was not inferior to her in any way. Wanting to subdue Hunyo and continue to sit firmly on the throne of the main wife of the Ling family was a challenge. However, the Empress was full of confidence. Ling Han took out the heavenly Tao Jade, and smashed out a gap. The two of them pressed their palms together, extracting the essence within. Hong, their whole bodies suddenly trembled, and an astonishing multicolored light shot out from their bodies, forming one seal after another. Each seal was different. 2 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours, 1 day. Ling Han and the Empress had both reached a state of saturation, and could no longer accept the power of the heavenly Tao Jade, and they were also filled with confidence that they could deliver the fifth strike. However, the essence of the heavenly Tao Jade was still endlessly gushing out from the gap, as if it would never stop. It could not be sealed. Ling Han frowned. Wouldn't the heavenly Tao Jade be wasted like this? At first, his plan was very good. Hunyo had come, and he could give the remaining heavenly Tao Jade to her, but now he had to break through to the fifth severance. Otherwise, the essence of the heavenly Tao Jade would quickly fade away, and he would miss the opportunity formed from these 10 months of bitter battles. This was the accumulation of innumerable battles. The next time he wanted to reach this kind of state, he might have to fight 10 times, or 100 times more enemies. The problem was, this was a chance that only appeared once in an epic. Under normal circumstances, how long would you need to encounter so many supreme prodigies? Thus, if he missed this chance, the next chance might be 1,000,000 years, or 10 million years later. Ling Han pondered for a moment, exited the Black Tower, and then entered into the spatial god tool. Take it. He tossed out the remaining heavenly Tao Jade, and then turned to leave, leaving behind bewitching Maiden Ro, who was baffled. His heart ached. He naturally wanted to leave such a good thing for his own people, but Hunyo was in a hurry, and had long since disappeared without a trace. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had not advanced into the severing mundane tier, either, so she was completely unqualified to refine it. Otherwise, she would only be seeking death. He could only let this demoness take advantage of him. Bewitching Maiden Ro received the heavenly Tao Jade, her expression completely dumbfounded. What do you mean by that? You threw a rock at me and then ran. What did I do to you? Why did you hit me? However, in the next moment she sensed the energy released by the heavenly Tao Jade, and she immediately revealed an astonished expression. It was too majestic, as if the heavenly Tao was right in front of them, within reach. She hurriedly grabbed the heavenly Tao Jade tightly, sat down cross-legged, and began to refine the benefits. The moment she took the initiative to guide the essence in the heavenly Tao Jade, she immediately discovered what kind of precious treasure this was. The inadequacies in her previous cultivation had been repaired one by one, and reached a perfect state. Her 4 severance had all been aimed at her own body, but now, the mortal bonds that had been severed had all returned and replaced them. There was now a clear chasm between her and the heavenly Tao. Was this a bad thing? No. She immediately discovered that it was not so. Though there was a distance between her and the heavenly Tao, on the contrary, she instead understood the heavenly Tao even more clearly. That was because it was not real when one was within it, just like when one was in a chess game, one would instead be muddled. But now that she had jumped out of the chess game, she could look at it from a more macroscopic perspective, so it was naturally different. She was currently advancing from a king tier to an emperor tier, and she was a divine fetus in the first place. After becoming an emperor tier, her future would be infinitely bright. Didn't Ling Han hate her? Why did he give her such a precious treasure? Could it be that this was a token of love? This enemy still knew how to be embarrassed, and wanted to abduct her without even saying a single word to her. She definitely had to be as reserved as she could be. Otherwise, Ling Han would still think that she was a casual woman. She was not casual in the slightest. It was just that she had cultivated charm techniques, and was naturally smiling. Ling Han did not know that bewitching Maiden Ro had misunderstood. His heart was still aching. He had actually thrown such a precious treasure to an outsider, and he wanted some peace and quiet. But when he returned to the Black Tower, he immediately comprehended under the reincarnation tree. He and the Empress had definitely absorbed even more of the essence of the heavenly Tao Jade, erasing any small flaws that had appeared on their way up, and reaching a level of perfection, and the majority of the energy was pushing the circulation of the heavenly Tao, allowing them to witness the profound mysteries of the 5th severance. That door that had initially been tightly sealed was already showing signs of loosening. Next, it would be up to them. How could they push open this door, and from there, enter? After all, the heavenly Tao Jade only increased the possibility of reaching the 5th severance by a sliver. Under the reincarnation tree, time flew. Both Ling Han and the Empress were exuding flashes of light that intertwined to form a massive ball of light. Great Tao flowed on the surface, and it was as if it was still breathing, retracting, and releasing. Every time it was retracted and released, there would be a terrifying aura circulating. If it were not for the fact that they were inside the Black Tower, it was guaranteed that the whole Three-Yang Peak would be able to sense it. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, a whole 1,000 years passed, and Ling Han and the Empress opened their eyes at practically the same time. The orbs of light around them also suddenly shattered, only to see that there was no white in their eyes. Instead, there was an indescribably deep galaxy in their eyes. Their bodies exuded an aura that far surpassed that of the 4th severance, but in essence, belonged to the severing mundane tier, incredibly mysterious. 5th severance. No, they had not yet delivered this strike. It was only that they were still a sliver away from this step. They needed to first pass the heavenly tribulation, and then they could deliver this strike towards the heaven and earth, and step into the ranks of monarch tiers. Let's go! The two of them exited the Black Tower at the same time, and then each drew out an azure peach leaf, placing it above their heads. Boom! The heaven and earth roared furiously, and 2 dark clouds immediately rolled over. You could deliver the 1st severance, the 2nd severance, the 3rd severance, and the 4th severance, and each strike would strike the heaven and earth, but after the 4th severance, at least the roots would still be broken and the threads connected. Thus, though the heaven and earth were furious, their fury was limited, and this was reflected in the might of the heavenly tribulation. But the 5th severance, when the strike descended, that would completely sever their connection with the heaven and earth, as if they had jumped out of the restraints of the heaven and earth. This definitely could not be allowed. The heaven and earth would not allow it. Thus, the heavenly tribulation surged, wanting to use its strongest fury to erase this kind of abnormality. However, the natural peach seal played its role. This kind of source power of heaven and earth could not help cultivators comprehend Tao and increase their cultivation level. It seemed to be of no help at all, but it could conceal the secrets of heaven and make the might of the heavenly tribulation weaker. At this kind of moment, there was nothing more useful than the natural peach seal. The two peach seals immediately released a light that soared into the skies. A strange power surged over, and it was as if the three-yang peak had been cut off from the world and had become an independent heaven and earth. The scale of the thunderclouds immediately shrunk. Though it still far surpassed the level of the fourth severance, it was at most comparable to the Yang Soul tribulation. Wasn't the fifth severance equivalent to the Yang Soul? Then wouldn't this kind of heavenly tribulation be a small matter? That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.